support we provide. Thank you all, our speakers, panelists, and participants for joining us on this journey. I encourage each of us here today to actively listen, to learn, and to carry forward this message of understanding. Together, let's not only improve learning opportunities, but also provide emotional and psychological support so every individual with dyslexia can feel empowered to reach their potential. Thank you once again, everyone, for being here today and for taking part in this very vital conversation. I think I'm handing over back to Mr. Kopin. Are you there?
All right. Yes, I'm here. I'm here. Sorry about that. But we're here. So thank you very much, Dr. Brent, for that powerful opening remark. And it spoke, I'm sure, resonated with all those watching online and listening to us from around the world. You made some very important points. You reminded us that dyslexic individuals often face numerous challenges. Sometimes it's like needed under academic struggles which they face, and that we as a community need to realize the full impact of dyslexia and commit an open conversation, especially on the mental health issues regarding dyslexia. Thank you very much. And now to move to a very important aspect of this conversation and this dialogue, which happens to be keynote. Ladies and gentlemen, to give us a keynote address this morning, we're joined by Dr. Neil Alexander Passy. He experiences dyslexia himself and has over the last 20 years specialized in emotional experience of having a learning difference called lived experience. Now, it's published not less than 15 books and 12 peer-reviewed papers in the field of dyslexia and neurodiversity, looking at the correlations with mental health, with success, with crime, creativity, parenting, and with marriage. Dr. Neil Alexander Passy gained his PhD in 2018, investigating dyslexia, traumatic schooling, and post-school success. And he uses the bi-ability theoretical model for dyslexia and invisible disabilities and the use of post-traumatic growth concept, otherwise known as PTG concept, to understand how many individuals with dyslexia and invisible disabilities can be successful despite or because they experience traumatic schooling as children. And that's very, very outstanding. Now, he's an expert in dyslexia. He's an expert in mental health, looking at the lived experience resulting in trauma, as well as what makes a successful dyslexic, having a dyslexic partner and being a dyslexic parent. Neil is the Special Education Needs and Disabilities Coordinator and Examination Access Assessor at a large secondary school in the north of London. He is a scientific board member for the Asia Pacific Journal of Development Differences, Dyslexia Association of Singapore, an academic board member at SPELT, which is a dyslexia organization in Tasmania, Australia. He's also a member of the newly formed Dyslexia Research Center of Excellence, a part of the Dare Dyslexia Foundation. And finally, Neil acts as a consultant inclusion expert for the UK's Department of Education, which is very, very important work. Ladies and gentlemen, to give us a keynote address, please help me welcome none other than Dr. Neil Alexander Passy. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Neil Alexander Passy will be joining us via recorded video he sent in very shortly. But while we're trying to patch that up and put it on, I was privileged to be host of a program with Dyslexia Nigeria on my radio program on Nigeria Info. And yes, we hear about dyslexia, but I really didn't understand it. Never really paid attention to it. And if I in the media can say that, then what about those out there? So I'm taking my notes and also making sure that we'll pay more attention to this. But Nigeria is a unique country because it's the most populous African country, and you have Nigerians all around the world. And I'm sure we'll get to hear from our experts and our guests today the challenges and the opportunities from their parts of the world. But for us here in Nigeria, I've learned that, for instance, the prevalence of dyslexia is quite higher than, some would even imagine. I've seen some stats which say that an estimated 10 to 15% of Nigerian children have dyslexia. I don't know how true that is. But that's what I've seen while getting ready for this program. Am I on? All right. So we also hear that not less than 70% of Nigerians are unaware. They don't have an idea. They don't even know. They've never heard of dyslexia. That's a challenge, that must be overcome. 70% is too huge a gap. I also listened to what Dr. Tikolo talked about, which is the education and academic struggles that dyslexic students go through. And I can't now imagine how many of them are going through this without even knowing what to do about them or what it is that is behind what they're going through. And the stats, for instance, from the United Nations Education, Scientific and Cultural Organization that tell us that only 12% of teachers in Nigeria receive any training on dyslexia. Only 12%. That's unacceptable. That's unacceptable. So please bear with us when Dr. Passe's video is ready. We'll put it on so we can listen to his opening remark. And I think from what we read and what we've heard from opening address by Dr. Tikolo, a lot of work needs to be done. A lot of work needs to be done. Talking about the awareness, which is where the media comes in, which is where Dyslexia Nigeria comes in, the wonderful work they're doing. Talking about making sure that the message is out there. There's a lot to be done. I do not know what our guests would tell us today. If we can do it, if it can be achieved, I do not know. So you look at the side of the media, on the side of organizations like Dyslexia Nigeria, on the side of the government, a lot needs to be done. And also while preparing for this program and taking my notes, I read that 60% of Nigerian children with dyslexia drop out of school. 60% of Nigerian children with dyslexia do not complete their education. And according to the World Bank, dyslexic students are 3 times more likely to repeat a grade. So instead of being promoted along with their students, this is what they go through. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really looking forward to hearing, about how we can overcome this, especially by breaking the stigma with regards to mental health issues and dyslexia. Well, also, we're told about the economic impact of dyslexia. And according to Dyslexia International, what I'm hearing is that, what I read is that dyslexia costs Nigeria an estimated 1.4 trillion naira every single year. In terms of productivity and the ability, or what is lost from the production that would have been brought to the Nigerian economy from those who are affected by this condition. All right, can we go for a break? Okay, so while we're waiting we'll get to hear from Dr. Nilan Alexander Passy very shortly, as soon as possible, let me say. But before that, let's introduce our first panel. And I'm really excited about this because of the background of the panelists. Really excited about this. I'd like to hear from them. Now, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, dyslexia, as we all know, presents unique obstacles, but beyond the challenges of reading, and learning, individuals often face another struggle. And that other struggle we're talking about is societal stigma. Now, this session will focus on identifying those challenges and the associated stigma that children and adults with dyslexia encounter on a daily basis. Now, from misunderstandings in the classroom and workplace to the internalized self-doubt that can follow. Now, these obstacles contribute significantly to the emotional well-being of these individuals. The weight of this stigma that they face can often be profound, impacting their self-esteem and leading to increased stress, leading to increased anxiety, and even depression. Well, our panel today brings together three outstanding experts in each dedicated to exploring the unique struggles within the dyslexic community. And I'm so excited. Let's start by introducing Taryn van Wyk. Taryn is the Senior Educational Psychologist at Dyslexia Ireland. Taryn has worked with Dyslexia Ireland for the past 6.5 years. Previously, Taryn worked in South Africa, where she grew up and studied. Now, Taryn has a Bachelor of Science degree, an honors degree in psychology from Rhodes University in Grahamstown, South Africa, and a postgraduate certificate in education from UNISA. Taryn van Wyk did her master's degree in educational psychology at the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, South Africa. And she gained substantial experience working in schools and private practice in Johannesburg before moving to Dublin in the Republic of Ireland in the year 2016. Taryn is passionate about the emotional well-being of children in schools, especially those with learning difficulties such as dyslexia. And she, interestingly, was part of a project developing an online dyslexia hub for students and families in the Republic of Ireland, which is quite remarkable. And she developed the emotional well-being sector or section of that project. I'd like to introduce and welcome to this morning's panel, Taryn van Wyk, who's a senior educational psychologist with Dyslexia Ireland. Taryn, you're welcome. Also, we have Dr. King Vanon joining us on this first panel discussion. Dr. King Vanon is a portfolio GP. She's a practicing family doctor, or should I say she's practicing family medicine in the City of London in the United Kingdom. She's also a GMC Pleb 2 examiner and neurodiversity coach, known as the Authentic Coach. That's authentic with a Q at the end, which is quite catchy. And she promotes dyslexia in medicine through her social media channels. Dr. King-Lanon volunteers in the community to improve mental health through her crafting workshops. She's a huge advocate of mental health and well-being, particularly in men and those who are neurodivergent. She takes on psychosynthesis and holistic approach to her consultations, which is quite interesting. And she was diagnosed with dyslexia at medical school and has been on a journey of self-discovery of the strengths that come with being neurodivergent. It had a huge impact on her own mental health, having gone through medical schools, a counselor twice. And she also further got support throughout a junior doctor and throughout her GP training. I think she's done so well now to be advocating for those who are towing that part. Dr. King-Lanon, neurodiversity coach with Authentic Coach, you're welcome. And I like the catchy cue at the end of Authentic. Thank you very much for joining us. We're meant to have a third panelist, and we're hoping that he can join us as soon as possible. He's here. All right, fantastic. So we have Sean Anthony Robinson, who is the co-founder of Dr. Dyslexia Dude. Sean, it's good to have you. Sean Anthony Robinson, PhD, is a social entrepreneur, co-founder of the award-winning graphic novel, Dr. Dyslexia Dude. He served on the advisory council of Benetech, and he's a former board member with the International Dyslexia Association, one of those bodies from which I got the stats I was reading out earlier. Robinson has over 45 publications and has received several distinguished honors throughout his early career, such as the 2024 Communicator Award, Innovation and Strategic Achievement Social Impact for Innovation and Achievement, which is from the Academy of Interactive and Visual Arts, along with his wife, Dr. Inshira Robinson. He's also an honoree of the Reading Center's 4th Hall of Fame class since 2023, the 2022 Wisconsin Innovation Award with his wife, which is interesting, Dr. Robinson, the 2017 Alumni Achievement Award, and the new Trier High School Alumni Hall of Honor, the 2016 Outstanding Young Alumni Award from the University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh, Educator of the Year from Allstate Insurance in Chicago in 2005, and Robinson is also a life member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Remarkable. Sean Anthony Robinson, co-founder of Dr. Dyslexia Dude. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think all our panelists today are so inspiring with the work that they're doing, and I'm sure that our viewers and listeners from around the world cannot wait to hear from you. We'll take a break right now as we watch a short video titled Dyslexia Nigeria video, and I'm sure we'll get to know more about the work that Dyslexia Nigeria is doing. So please, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, relax in your seats comfortably as we watch the video. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We'll take that video and of course the keynote message from our keynote speaker later. But Dr. King-Lanon, please kindly turn on your camera Thank you very much. Also, Sean Anthony Robinson and Taryn Van Wyk, please turn on your camera. Sorry about that. All right, having introduced our panelists, my name is Kofi Bartels. Once again, I'm a journalist, a broadcast journalist, media practitioner, and communications expert. Thank you very much for your time. We're talking about mental health, addressing challenges and stigma in dyslexic individuals. And I would like us to go straight to the questions this morning. But of course, we'd like to identify in this panel session the key mental health challenges that dyslexic individuals go through. We'd also like to understand the impact of the stigma that they face. We would like to highlight early educational experiences that they go through. And of course, we seek to discuss barriers in professional and personal life. So without wasting time, I'd like to start with Taryn Van Wyk. And from there, I'll go to Sean Robinson, and then finally, Dr. King Vanon. Please, can you share a bit with us, Taryn, your experience, your journey working with, dyslexic individuals, or personally experiencing this dyslexia? So let's start from your personal experience, and then also your experience working with individuals who have dyslexia. Taryn?
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. Can you hear me all right? Great. So I have been working as an educational psychologist for a number of years now. Started off in South Africa, as you mentioned there in my bio, and just noticed the lack of training around dyslexia. Even as an educational psychologist, the direct input we had on understanding the challenges faced by individuals with dyslexia was very minimal. Moving to Ireland in 2016, I was lucky to get a job with Dyslexia Ireland. And really, it's over the last 6 years that I've come across hundreds, thousands of individuals with dyslexia through my job, working with them personally, working with teachers and doing some training for schools, and just notice the common challenges faced by these individuals and students and adults included. We can't hear you. Sorry, you're on mute there. There we go.
So Taryn, thank you very much. Tell us some more about your personal journey, right from, when you were in South Africa, and, how did you get to discover about dyslexia, before becoming interested in working with dyslexic individuals?
Yeah, I guess my journey would go back to kind of while I was training to be an educational psychologist. So going back to my own school days, I was fortunate. I didn't have any learning difficulties, and I kind of thrived in school. I enjoyed the routine and the structure, and was always called on by teachers to assist individuals in the classroom. I remember being 9 years old and going outside the class with a young lady in my class, another 9-year-old, and reading with her, and the teacher just being like, you read with the students, and kind of wondering, even as a 9-year-old, why are we being sent out the class if she's having difficulty with accessing the work? I'm only 9. Why am I being sent out with her? And just always being curious around these different experiences that children have had in schools. Some of us enjoy in school, thriving, and those who are struggling, and noticing the different ways that teachers interact with us as students, how they form their own favorites in class and respond differently to those that are struggling, even without necessarily saying anything overtly discriminatory, but just you can see from the way that they ask questions or respond. And this kind of curiosity around experiences in school followed me through high school. And in university, I started off studying a Bachelor of Science, focusing on psychology. But I knew in my heart, I was like, I don't really know if this is the calling, if I want to just be a clinical psychologist. And it was only in my third year when one of my friends said to me that she was going to study educational psychology, that I even discovered this field and thought, that's it. That is where my calling is. I need to understand from a psychological point of view and from the educational point of view, the learning process, and the just kind of the mix of that. And so went on to do my master's at the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg. After doing a PGCE, so I got a little bit of experience from the teacher side, working in schools, managing a big classroom, and you do kind of see from that perspective of how challenging it can be to deliver a lesson when you have individuals of all different capabilities in one classroom. But knowing from the beginning and trying to be mindful of that and tailor your lesson to each student's needs and learning differences, I think
Right.
is something that needs a lot more work with training of teachers. And that's kind
Mm.
of how I got into the field.
All right. Interesting. Very interesting indeed. And I must say you're doing a great work over there in the Republic of Ireland. Thank you very much, Karen Van Wyk. Let's go to Sean Anthony Robinson, who's the co-founder of Dyslexia, that is Dr. Dyslexia Dude. Sean, thank you very much for joining us. And please tell us a bit of your journey, if you experience dyslexia at some point, and of course, your journey into working with and on dyslexia.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. So I have dyslexia, and the first time I was diagnosed when I was 18 years old, and I had graduated from high school reading at an elementary level. So I was extremely behind in terms of my academic ability in reading. And once I started learning to read at 18, I just never really stopped learning, going to school. And that's really springboarded my career to be an advocate for other students with dyslexia, particularly students who look like me, Black and brown students, and really just trying to be a voice for those who are voiceless and be a hope for those who are hopeless. So I really used my own story, my pain, my experience to really help give other kids hope that they could be successful, whatever they want to do. They put their mind to, that they have opportunities to feel success. And so it all really stemmed really from having a professor who taught me how to read at 18, and never looking back, and just always believing in myself and having faith that God's gonna make a way for me. So I just realized that, my experiences are the things that shape who I am, and it shaped all my experiences I've had, both good and bad.
Your professor taught you to read at the age of 18.
Yes, yes, sir. Yeah, yeah. I was in high school and elementary and young. I was unable to read, and they just passed me through the system, just kind of pushed me through. And then my mother has found this professor who tested me and said I was one of the most illiterate kids he ever met, but I had a gift. He said I had a gift, and he said he was going to teach me how to read, and it would probably be some of the hardest challenges that I face in my life, and it was. And once I learned to read, he taught me how to read. I never looked back and went on and got 3 degrees. Just they never stopped. Like a little train, choo choo. I think I can. I think I can. You gotta have that mentality. I tell kids all the time, people, you gotta have that man. Everything starts with the mind, right? You gotta believe in yourself. And if you don't believe in yourself, well, it's gonna be hard for you to be successful if you don't have that love for yourself. Forget what people say. You gotta just think positive. So once he taught me, I kept moving.
Fantastic, fantastic, a remarkable story. And only one can only imagine the number of students who, parents and teachers are not aware are dyslexic, and just say you're just not good at school, but look at you. And God bless the heart of that professor who taught you to read. You've done amazing and fantastic. We'll get to hear more from you, but let's quickly go over to Dr. King Van On, the authentic coach. King, thank you very much for your time. Please give us a brief account of your dyslexia journey, either as first-hand experience or someone working on dyslexia.
Okay. So I was always a reasonably good student in primary school and secondary school. And I just worked long hours into small hours for my studies with GCSEs. And I just thought everyone studied the same. So everyone thought, oh, she's very academic, she's very clever. And there was a big jump from GCSEs to A levels. And so I didn't finish my A levels properly. And I went back to college to get the requirements to get into medicine. Fortunately, I managed to get in, and it wasn't until the second year that I was diagnosed with dyslexia. And it was only because I just felt, why am I working so hard, so many hours, tired all the time? And I spoke to a fellow student and asked her how long it took her to read a very short chapter in a neuroscience book. And she said it took an hour and she understood everything. She digested the information. And I said to her, it took me 5 hours and I still don't understand it. I still can't remember what I read. So fortunately, the university had a student support a tutor, and she did a screening, and then I was diagnosed with dyslexia. And I never knew what it was, never even considered it. And what do I do with this information? So I didn't really it didn't really sink in until I was properly into my GP training, that okay, things have to change, I've got to learn how to learn. And so even at the age of sort of in my late 30s, I was learning how to learn. Even now, sort of in my 50s, I'm learning how to learn. and I'm enjoying it. But at the time it was tough because it's so grueling, the medical training, the specialty training. So being a single mom and so I wasn't sure whether it was just me or a medical degree, but I've accepted that the dyslexia did play a huge role. And it certainly played a huge role in the specialty I went into, because I originally wanted to go into surgery and a surgical specialty. And there's lots of names and I've got terrible problems remembering even my son's name sometimes, never mind the names of all the different parts of the body and things like that. So I really struggled with that. And eventually my friend suggested that I become a GP. And I thought, that'd be terrible. You have to remember so many different conditions. And that was even worse for me. So, but I managed to get into a GP training program. And really challenging, because the exams, I think any specialty is challenging with the professional exams as a dyslexic person. And I failed my practical once and I failed my written 4 times. And I literally had to beg to take the 5th attempt, because after a certain amount of attempts, they kick you out of the program. Unfortunately, I passed, and I just think it's the best specialty for me. I love it because it's very holistic with patients. I often do see a lot of neurodivergent patients with a lot of mental health as a result of the dyslexia, and it has a huge impact. And I'm in a very fortunate position where I can do that mini coaching session to boost people's confidence. And also, to expand on that, I didn't want people to go through what I did with my specialty training. So even if it's a short conversation, it can boost that person's confidence, because it really knocks your confidence, affects your mental health in a huge way. Like you mentioned, I went through the student counselling service a few times, and even when I became a junior doctor, I went through it. They still provide that extended service, but I've been through sort of the mental health services for GPs 3 times as well. Well, not GPs, just doctors 3 times as well. So it's had a huge impact on my mental health. And I'm in a really amazing place at the moment, sort of mentally and sort of vocation, and I'd like to support those, as particularly in the medical field, because that's what I know. Whether they need coaching or just a listening ear. And I've had so many people usually contacting me after they've failed an exam, and they just find it a huge challenge, because they're so used to doing so well in at school, like medical school, and it's a big hit to their confidence. So that's what I try and do.
Wow, amazing story. Dr. King went on going through your GP training, coming out with flying colors, facing challenges and obstacles and overcoming them. It's an inspiration, really inspiring story. And of course, you don't look like you're in your 50s, so you also have to give us later, and maybe when we're done the secret, so we can also get those youngs. Thank you very much, King. That's amazing. Okay, back to Taryn Van Vick. Taryn, you have a role as an education psychologist, and you told us, the journey and the process that led you to choosing to focus on educational psychology. And you used the word calling, which is quite interesting that you see it as a calling. But what are some of the most pressing, challenges that you've observed that children with dyslexia face in the school environment, especially when it comes to stigma from their peers or their educators? Taryn?
I think this is such an important question because, you ask the challenges that dyslexic individuals face in school. And I think my two panelists, both being, diagnosed with dyslexia later in life, have highlighted that early experience and how challenging it is when you don't have the awareness. And really, it's the stigma around why is this child struggling in school, and the lack of awareness and training around dyslexia and learning differences, and neurodivergence, and giving that child a reason. And so often, young students are just told they must be lazy. If you just worked harder, you would be okay. And they internalize this really and feel like there's something wrong with them. And so many times when I'm meeting students of all ages, but particularly around that kind of teenage years, when this is the first time that we are identifying dyslexia and giving them that label in a positive way, they have held on to all these misbeliefs and stigmas around I'm just not good at school. There's something wrong with me, and it comes through these messages, and I'm so struck by Dr. Vanon just saying, not realizing that not everybody's working this hard, and really it's that kind of belief if you just worked harder. And in all school reports, in all parent feedbacks, oh, your child just needs to apply themselves. Because often individuals with dyslexia are so bright, and verbally having conversations with them, they're like, this child knows what's going on. Why are they not putting it on paper? They're just not working hard. They're just not applying themselves. They didn't finish their homework. Oh my gosh, they must have just not done it. Meanwhile, these children are spending hours, and often they can mask it in primary school by putting in all that hard work. And then they think, okay, yes, I worked harder and I did better. That's great. And then there's a tipping point where, whether it's in further education or high school, secondary school, where they just can't manage, they can't keep up, and they're spending 5 hours doing one project and not finishing, and still being told you should work harder, and having those conversations around, well, how much is everybody else around me working? And it takes bravery to speak to peers, because even peers might have that conception of, this comes so easily to me. Why are you not getting it? Why are you taking so long to read this? Or you read that, but you can't answer the question. So all that kind of misunderstanding just comes from that low awareness. And we know that if you have more awareness around dyslexia, it helps break those stigmas.
Oh. Wow, interesting. It's a real challenge to hear and learn the pressing situations that children with dyslexia are going through. You've talked about the fact that parents are told their children need to apply themselves more. They're not trying hard enough. And you've said it, and Dr. Vanon also said that dyslexic children and students really try very hard. And I would say even harder, than the rest of society. All right, let's go back to Sean Anthony Robinson. Sean, given your personal experience and the work that you've undertaken, can you speak to some of the unique societal challenges that young people with dyslexia encounter, and how does stigma play a role in these societal challenges that they face?
Yes, I think my colleagues had, addressed most of it too. Particularly at a younger age, if you don't have the proper diagnosis or assessment and intervention, you're out of the game mentally. You're on the sideline trying to figure out how you get into the game. And so I think that's the biggest factor is that young kids are not getting properly diagnosed, and then they might not be getting the right intervention. And so those two things right there will open the gate for students to feel success. And without those two things, again, your mind is playing tricks on you. You feel like you're less than, you feel like you can't do it. You got a negative attitude, a negative spirit, right? You have a spirit that's over you that's really self-defeating. And so then you start talking that way. And, they say that the tongue is powerful, words have meaning. And so you start speaking things into existence, then you don't feel success. So I think that has a major factor in students' development as they grow and mature through life. And if you don't have that proper support, well, it's going to be very hard. And so I think my colleagues had hit it right on the nail that you got to get them early so they have a chance to feel success and not get older in life and struggle and give up. And yes, students do uh, have to work harder. It's not because uh, it's just I worked hard. It's just a thing of life. You have a will and a grit, and you want to get things right. And so you put the time and effort into it, and it doesn't make you any less than anybody else or stupid. It's just that for me, I just when I want to do something, I put my mind into it. So if it took me 5 hours, 10 hours, 20 hours, I got it done. When I was younger, that mentality was different. I did feel like I was stupid or slow because I had to put that time into it. But now looking back, it was just a creativity. I was like, hey, I wanna figure this out. I don't care how long it takes me. And so, but again, to my colleague's point, it got to start young with students. You got to get them diagnosed. Otherwise, they may not have a fighting chance. And they get older, there's a lot more variables and factors that go into it. You're on mute.
Thank you very much, Sean. You've said a lot. And of course, talking about the societal challenges, you have to spend a lot of hours, getting to understand what you're reading. But I wanted to talk about, stigma, societal stigma, and how it exacerbates the situation of the dyslexic child or adult or student. Can you please briefly just talk about the stigma and can use your personal experience as a case in point, if you want to?
I think, two of my colleagues, but stigmas, negative stigmas to it. Sometimes people who don't understand dyslexia or resistant to understanding it too, they just believe that, you're slow, you're stupid, you can't do this, you can't do that. So I think, sometimes there is a stigma to it that really impacts students' ability. Here in the States and in the US, sometimes when you talk about dyslexia, some people don't want to even have a conversation about it because like, oh, there's nothing wrong with him, or they don't really understand the psychological impact that dyslexia has on young children or even adults. And so they might identify them as being slow, slow readers or slow, having this ability to do things slower. And so I think just having that mindset and low expectations for kids with dyslexia is a major stigma, right? They have low standards and they don't think they can achieve high. Well, right there, you're not giving the kid an opportunity if you have low expectations for them based on, where they're at.
Thank you very much, Sean. Appreciate it. Dr. King went on. Let's talk about the signs of mental health challenges in young children, because, of course, we are looking today at breaking the stigma. We're trying to draw the nexus or the connection between dyslexia and mental health. And we want to understand the mental health side of things. Dr. King went on, what are some of the signs, of mental health challenges in young children?
So they can become a bit withdrawn or try to have some sort of school avoidance or play up to mask that, or they work really, really hard and they tend to be the ones who are really tired because they've been up all night or they've been emotionally challenged with struggling to do their homework. So they could be clues as well. There could also be other clues if they may have a diagnosis of autism or ADHD. So it can be a challenge when something's not right, the child's not thriving, they're not really interacting. Their school reports, as Dr. Van Wyk said, where they're bright but they're not applying themselves. So that's when I'd suggest the parent goes back to the school and consider a diagnosis of dyslexia, especially if they don't read very much. Having said that, myself as a child, I loved reading, but it was a lot of fiction, so I didn't have to be tested on it. I enjoyed it for that, so I was very fortunate in that way. But there's other children who would just avoid reading or any sort of writing, and that could be some clue to the fact that they may be dyslexic. There's also other conditions that may affect a diagnosis of dyslexia, such as dyspraxia, whether they have like a vision problem. So I recommend all patients to get regularly checked for their eyes, because if they can't see the board, it could be as simple as that, or it could be, you know, where they may struggle with colors. My son wasn't diagnosed with color blindness until he was about 12, 13, and it never occurred to me. Which was a bit of a challenge because his favourite subject was geography, with the green and the red sort of maps and things. So always so consider those sort of things. So health checks, eye checks, check their reading together, whether they're struggling, and consider a diagnosis of dyslexia. So their mental health, they're low in mood, not eating properly, not sleeping properly, not really. I hate to use the word behaving, because it's not so much that they're misbehaving as such, but their interactions with their peers and their teachers and their approach to homework, they would probably be sort of key signs to consider dyslexia.
All right, that's a lot of food for thoughts, information for viewing audience, and the mental challenges that young children with dyslexia go through. Thank you very much, King, for that. I want to turn back to Taryn Van Beek. Taryn, in your view, what specific misconceptions about dyslexia do you think contribute most significantly to the stigma surrounding it? What specific misconceptions about dyslexia do you think contribute most significantly to the stigma surrounding it? And how, in your opinion, might these misconceptions impact a dyslexic individual's self-esteem and ultimately his or her willingness to seek some help or some support?
Yeah, I think this is an important question, because even when somebody is diagnosed with having dyslexia, there are those misconceptions around what does that mean. Often, you know, even when I tell parents, after an assessment, your child has dyslexia, they can get quite upset and say, well, does that mean they're never going to learn how to read? Does that mean that they're never going to be able to, you know, do well in school? Does that mean that they'll always struggle? And while we know dyslexia is lifelong, yes, these things will always have their challenge to them. It's not a case of you can't do it, you can't read, you can't spell, you can't write. And I think that those misconceptions can create the biggest stigma in schools, where teachers are trying to do their best to manage the support and the differentiation for these students, while keeping in mind that, you know, they don't want to make it too difficult. So let's maybe give them less spellings for homework, and this could be a reasonable support to put in place. But somebody with dyslexia is going to feel maybe that as quite stigmatizing as well. Then are you saying I can't do the spellings? And often students actually don't want to tell their peers that they have dyslexia. They don't want them to see them as being different and as not being able to do something. And so they don't seek that support. They don't want to have different homework. They don't want to have different spelling lists. And sometimes they don't even want to be taken out of class to access support, which is so important for them to make progress. And it's all because they don't want to be seen as something wrong with them. And even saying I have dyslexia feels like an admission that I can't do these things, which are so important in a school environment. And I think perhaps it comes down to even a structural stigma. The way schools are built is not for those with learning differences. And that stigma around we all have to learn in this parameter, in this way that schools work. And if you fall outside of that because of a neurodivergence, then you can't learn. And suddenly you are falling behind or having to do things differently, called stupid. And it comes to that structure of learning, structure of schools, and how those who don't learn in those traditional ways are not catered for, which makes it harder for them to access support because it's an add-on. It's a removal from class. It's a difference instead of just being a normal way of the whole class is doing things a little bit differently, is learning in a different way, and making it more supportive environment rather than a difference. You're back on mute. Sorry, we can't hear you.
Sorry about that.
No
Okay,
problem.
Taryn, thank you. I hope you can hear me now. Thanks for highlighting these misconceptions. And of course, we need to understand how they feel, what those who have dyslexia go through, to really be able to respond appropriately and offer them the support that they require. For what you've said, and the other panelists have said, it seems that we have a lot of work to do. We actually do have a lot of work to do, especially in that part of the world. Taryn, you were in South Africa, so you know that Africa is a unique situation, and with the support system and for education services in schools. So we have a lot of work to do. Thank you very much, Taryn.
Thank you.
I would like to go back to Sean. Sean, please tell us, for those with dyslexia, societal misunderstanding and misconceptions can lead to profound personal changes, like we just heard from Taryn, who talked about the misconceptions. Can you share, please, Sean, how stigmatizing attitudes about dyslexia have impacted the people that you've worked with and even yourself on your own journey?
Yes. Again, I have to read my colleagues about the system, right? That's where it really starts too, in terms of providing the right assessments and opportunities for kids. And if it's not in school, parents are doing a lot to get their kids the proper services outside of school. And so the school is not really built for students with dyslexia. The way we think, the way we do things, it's just many people don't understand our minds, our creativity. And so one of the things that I tell students is you can cry, but you can't quit, right? You can cry, you can scream, do what you want, but just don't quit. Don't ever quit. And so I think sometimes students will feel defeated based on the number of times they have failed, right? And I tell students all the time, you're not a failure. You fail, but not a failure. And so I think, it really starts in their own mind, right? Because as we go through life, as students, as adults, we're going to have people on the sideline who are cheering against us, like sports, right? They're going to be cheering against us. And so for students, I think, they have to really understand their own personal strengths and really understand how they can navigate the space and be their own advocate. Because sometimes they might not have an advocate, and so they have to speak for themselves. My aunt used to say, "A closed mouth doesn't get fed." So you have to speak. You have to, explain what you want. But also the other point too is that sometimes when students don't know how to communicate effectively, that's a cry for help. Right? If they're acting out in class, or they're fighting, or maybe saying inappropriate words. Well, that could be a cry for help. And so I think, sometimes people look at that as being defiant or behavioral issues, but in fact, the student could be really screaming for help and wanting to have somebody save them, essentially, and give them an opportunity. So again, there's a lot of stigmas that go into it. But at the end of the day, students just can't quit. You can cry all you want, but just don't quit. Go get a punching bag, go for a run, but just don't quit. Because once you quit, you've taken yourself out of the game completely. And I tell students, you just can't quit. I don't care. Don't use that word in your vocabulary. Don't say it. Don't speak it. Don't write it. Just keep believing in yourself and keep moving forward. You're on mute again.
Interesting, Sean. Thank you so very kindly for that. And also for pointing out that I'm mute. Sorry about that. But I want to go back to Dr. Kingman. Dr. Kingman, you're a medical person here. You also work in community mental health, and you use holistic approaches to support neurodivergent individuals. Now, how do you think the stigma in society, we've heard from Taryn and of course Sean, but how do you think the stigma in society affects the mental health, the self-acceptance as well of individuals with dyslexia, especially if they're diagnosed later in life?
Yes, I think the stigma comes from not really understanding or knowing what it is, and there could be a misconception that it's a life sentence, as it were. In a sense, it is, because if you've got it, you've got it for life. But it isn't a life sentence where it limits you. And I think that's where the misunderstanding is. And especially in ethnic minorities, people in Nigeria, it's something that's not really accepted as a norm, and which is a shame, really. Not that it is like normal as such, which is the wrong word to use. It's not conventional, definitely, but it's a learning difference. And particularly in ethnic minorities, people see it as a disability, and it is because you are disadvantaged compared to a conventional learner. So that needs to be definitely acknowledged. But there's lots of misconceptions about how it can limit you in education, in career progression. And that's why I got onto social media, because I wanted to dispel that. You can do whatever you want to do as long as you are passionate about it, and you don't give up. There's so many times I think going through medicine, I wanted to give up. I wanted to give up medical training. I wanted to give up. I wanted to go into education, ironically. So because I believe in a lot in education with the general public on how dyslexia is perceived, and also educating a person in embracing their learning differences and making the most of how they learn. So in the past few years where I'm learning to learn myself, it doesn't always work. Certain techniques don't work for everyone, but it's having that exploration. And it's great that we've got people like Sean and Taryn working to get in early. But sometimes for the older generation, where it's not so much well known of what dyslexia is, or the awareness to get a diagnosis and get that support, that's where I come into saying that it's never too late. Some people don't discover until very late in life whether they have ADHD, dyslexia, or autism. It's never too late. It's the fact that you actually recognize it and get diagnosed. And even if you don't get diagnosed, but you have an inkling, there's strategies you can put in place or reach out to get support. There is support out there. So I'm hoping by doing that, it removes the stigma that actually it's just the way you are, and you need to embrace it and enhance the skills and the challenges you have to overcome that, to be not just successful. What success, there's different definitions to be successful, but to be happy in your life and your career, whether it's personal life, your vocation, and just not see it as something you've got to hide. You're on mute.
Thank you very much, Dr. King Venon. You shouldn't see it as something you need to hide. All right, it's been very interesting and enlightening listening to all of you. It's been a wonderful session. But in closing, I'd like us to look at actionable steps. And I'll start from Taryn Van Veek. Taryn, what are what do our educational our audience, individuals listening to us, watching us from around the world, what do they need to know or do rather to support individuals who are living with dyslexia and mental health challenges? So give us the actionable steps to take going forward.
I guess the first step to take is just to grow the awareness, to learn yourself what is dyslexia, what are learning difficulties, what are some of the signs, and to show compassion if you're in the education field, if you're working with students, individuals, for those who are struggling, to not think about what is wrong with this individual, what is going on that they can't do something, but let's think about why are they finding it challenging. So changing the questions we're asking ourselves, instead of what is wrong with this individual, why can't they do it, to what could be making this harder for them, how is the system making this harder for them. There's that saying, if a flower is not growing properly, we don't think there's something wrong with the flower. We replant it, we change the soil, we give it more water, we look at the environment. And the same is true for students. We need to look at what is going on around them that this individual is not thriving, because every single individual, every single student and child has potential to learn, to do well, to find their niche. And it's just the way that schools only look at reading and writing that those with dyslexia struggle the most. So asking those kind of questions would be my first step for everybody listening today.
Wow. When a flower is not growing properly, we don't say that there's something wrong with the flower. We actually look for ways to make sure the flower grows and blooms. That's amazing soundbite there. Thank you very much, Taryn. Go over to Sean. Sean, quickly, how can we amplify, because we're talking about actionable steps to take going forward, how can we amplify the voices of individuals with dyslexia and, of course, mental health conditions? Sean?
Yeah, again, I agree with my colleagues. We got to give kids opportunities. Those opportunities start with the right assessment, making sure that they're diagnosed correctly and then provide the right intervention. But everything comes back to opportunity. If kids are not getting opportunities, again, they're not going to understand how to reach their full potential. They're not going to understand, how they can navigate spaces. So again, it comes down to access and opportunity. I mean, to me, my colleagues hit it, on the nail. They talked about it, all the things, right? And so, if students are crying for help, well, they want an opportunity to figure out why they're crying, and figure out how they can feel good about themselves academically and socially, and even the careers they navigate, in post-secondary and college and career. And so again, everything comes down to access and opportunity. And if kids don't have access to early identification, assessments, and opportunities for intervention that are going to really help springboard them forward, it's going to be a hard road for them and their families, unfortunately. And so again, it really, if you want to give a kid a fighting chance, you got to give them the access and opportunity they need to tap into their God-given ability and talent so they can live out their life with success and purpose.
Thank you very much, Sean. Opportunity. We can't say that enough. Thank you very much. I want to remark or final question, rather, I want to send it to Dr. King Venon. Since we're talking about actionable steps, what are the next steps for this conversation? How can we continue to raise awareness on this very important issue of dyslexia and mental health? Okay.
So I've done it through my social media platforms, but I think it needs to be raised very early on, so the education, Sean and Taryn, the earlier the better, because it just means years taken away from stress and not understanding why they're struggling, and that support so that children can thrive. I think awareness in teachers, and not only just awareness as teachers want to do this, but they're not allocated the time and the funding to enable that. So educators, the people who fund it, like the government, it just needs to be pushed so that people can see the long-term effects it has on people, because they're losing money in regards to people not being in work, mental health problems, medication, all sorts of social economical sort of implications as well. So early recognition and better understanding with advertising possibly, and promotion of that. But I'm just wondering whether it's the unwillingness of doing that, because they're worried that everyone gets an assessment, which can be quite costly. But actually, in the long run, you're actually saving a huge fortune. And even just to go through a screening would be useful for someone to have that acceptance about, okay, I just learned differently. And it just means that they can look into their own strategies and reach out for support, like these platforms where they can hear other people's experiences, reach out for some sort of advice or some sort of input to improve the coping strategies, so that they are on an equal level of ability to make the most of their academic and achievements.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, King. We've learned a lot about the mental health aspect of dyslexia in terms of the relationship, the link between dyslexia and mental health. And we've learned a lot about how to identify children, students, young people who are living with dyslexia, and how to give them all the attention that they deserve. Now, for those who would like to know more about, of course, building resilient and support strategies, we have a second panel session coming on, which will be moderated by Olaide Odedron. We'll talk about support strategies in-depthly with that. But we have questions coming through from our watching audience on Zoom. I'd like to take them quickly before we are done with this panel. I see a message from Abdul Salam Muiz. Abdul Salam, good morning to you from this part of the world. Abdul Salam says, unfortunately, in Nigeria, and nobody cares, including the government, the education authorities in the workplace, about us or we who have dyslexia. Says even now, as a solar engineer, okay, so Abdul Salam is a solar engineer who knows both calculation, design, and installation. No one can fight for us. We're treated like the local, okay, mentions a company didn't treat him well, and now he says he's unemployed. Okay, so this has been an effect, is that an effect on his work because of lack of understanding about dyslexia and the challenges that those who have it go through. He was let go from his work, and that is a workplace challenge that needs to be done. Let's go over to Jesse Arowolo. Jesse, good morning to you. Jesse says, I exhibited signs of dyslexia when growing up, even though I didn't know what it was back then. For countries that have no professional ways of diagnosing for dyslexia in children, we often really rely on the signs exhibited to categorize learners. How can I professionally tell parents about it and how they can support their children? So I want to go to Tarin, who is, in education. What's your answer to Jesse's question about diagnosis?
Yeah, I think that Jesse is speaking to a broader issue here of access to identification, and something that we've spoken about in our panel of how crucial that is. Jesse, it sounds like you're working in the education field, probably as a teacher or something like that. And I just want to say, don't discount your own professional experience in that, and speaking to parents, saying you don't have to diagnose dyslexia, you don't have to say that somebody has it for sure, but you can talk about the signs, show them examples, what you're seeing in the classroom, having those early conversations. And this is something that's tricky. I've spoken to a lot of teachers who find this really hard because they don't feel empowered to do that and to have those conversations. And parents sometimes can give you a little bit of a hard time too and say there's nothing wrong with my child if they still have that stigma too. But
And I'll go to,
having those
I'll go to,
conversations could be really helpful. Speaking to parents from your professional view, what you're seeing, what are the signs you're seeing, and then relying on other resources to support that and just do the best that you can. And I know sometimes the structural support isn't there, but don't discount you as an individual having that real positive influence on somebody.
Thank you very much. And of course, also thanks to Jesse for that question. Next one here is sent in by Aliu Mafiali. Good morning to you. Aliu says, what are the possible ways to address the issues of dyslexia on students in a classroom as an educator? So Aliu is possibly an educator. What are the ways that he can address the issues of dyslexia in students? King, I'll throw this one to you.
Sorry, you're asking about how it can. Sorry, repeat the question.
So Aliu is an educator, I believe, and he wants to know how he, as an educator, can address dyslexia in students in his classroom.
Okay, so when you've got a big classroom, it's quite challenging to tailor for every student. But having a conversation with the child themselves, firstly, is, I think, key. Find out what they're struggling with, find out whether, you know, they're struggling to read the board, or whether they're struggling to hear, because sometimes sounds can affect it, and whether they're distracted, or if they have peers where they can't say, oh no, I don't want to sit next to you because I need to concentrate. So the first conversation I would is to speak to the child and see what they're struggling with, and then sort of put strategies possibly in place, but in a way where they do not feel like they're being targeted to be different, as it were. So for example, the classroom, if they find it quite distracting, not to sit them at the back, and when you move children around and saying, right, I'm going to have a bit of an experiment, we're going to move people around and see if it makes you feel better, so they're not isolated. So be inclusive. So if there's something that you're going to do with the child, so do it as an exercise where everyone gets involved, and you want to shake it up a bit. And so a child may find it easier if they have headphones. You know, you can just say generally, okay, so for this piece of work where we need you to concentrate, if people want to use headphones, that's fine, we've got headphones there. Or, you know, and the funding can be quite expensive. It could just be even those muffled ones, you know, the ones, the ear warmers. So being very creative with strategies is very important. And there's people out there on social media who'll give you free advice and things like that. So it's worth speaking to those sort of people who are actually have experience, who have certification. Just be a bit cautious of that, because there's a pitfalls where people want a lot of money and a lot of things that you don't need to do that for people who are quite passionate about sort of educating. There's some services that you may have to pay for. You know, reach out to your school governors, ask for a little bit of funding, invite people to come in and talk and have those strategies, and just plant those ideas where you can be creative. But I suggest the first things first is speak to the child, speak to the parent, and gauge whether the parent's sort of on board and things, because support at home is so important.
All right, support at home is very, very important, and the importance cannot be overemphasized. Thank you very much, King. Sean, there's a question directed at you. And Adeola Arofi, good morning to Adeola. Adeola says, Sean, can you share any powerful reading and writing strategies that really work for you as a young adult? You talked about, you know, your difficulty and how you overcame it.
Yes. Well, the simplest tool that helped me in terms of my reading, phonemic awareness, phonics, was the dictionary. That's all my professor taught me how to use, was the dictionary. The dictionary is a tool for language learning. Here in the States, it's not really looked at as a tool for that, but it really helped reinforce my understanding of sounds and words and vocabulary and meaning. And then, so that really helped me understand the reading process. I've been studying addiction for 30 years. It's one of my favorite books. And also for writing, I had to get a writing coach. I had to practice like anything else, riding a bike, swimming. I had to just put the time into it. There are specific writing strategies that could be used. For me, for writing, it was just putting my ideas on paper and reading them out loud. And if they didn't make sense, and then having somebody else read them. And if they didn't make sense to them, I knew that I wasn't writing clearly enough. So it was a process of just continuing to practice and finding somebody who can read my stuff and give me honest feedback, even though it hurt. Like, at the point where I want to cry sometimes, but it helped me become better at writing because somebody actually cared enough to really tell me where I was at, how I can get better. And so I always took that mind frame is I have to just put myself out there and get feedback from people and then just revise. And so again, for the reading strategies was just really the dictionary springboarded, and then of course, reading comprehension strategies, talking to people about what I'm reading and having a dialogue like we're doing now around different topics. And so that's the things that I've done throughout my career, and also things I do with students too, as I help them navigate this space. But again, everything comes back to what my colleague said, access and opportunity. You just got to give kids access to opportunities to feel success.
Well, thank you very much. Some practical tips right there to help those who want to overcome reading difficulties, learning difficulties as well. I personally have learned a lot, and I know that our audience have learned a lot as well. If you're watching, you can send your questions to us on the Zoom, message box. You can also send them on the other platforms. Do we have WhatsApp available for people to send messages through? Okay, just Zoom. Okay, so please, if you're watching, just go on Zoom link and then send your questions and contributions. And then, of course, we'll be very glad to read them. I want to thank everyone who's been watching so far. We have one more thing to do before we say goodbye to our panelists, because they're not leaving, of course. We're still continuing. We have the second panel up next. But we were to have been joined with a keynote speech by Dr. Neil Alexander Passey, who experiences dyslexia himself and has, over the past 20 years, specialized in the emotional intelligence, or rather emotional experience of having a learning difference called lived experience. Dr. Neil Alexander Passey has published 15 books, and 12 peer review papers in the field of dyslexia and neurodiversity, which is remarkable. His books and publications have looked at the correlations with mental health, success, crime, creativity, parenting, and marriage. Let's listen to Dr. Passey's keynote address, and then we'll be back. Thank you. All right, we'll listen to, all right, sorry about a sincere apologies. We'll listen to Dr. Neil Alexander Passey later on. But my job here is done. Before I introduce the moderator of the second panel, I want to say a big thank you to Taryn Van Wyk, who is a senior educational psychologist at Dyslexia Ireland. Taryn, it's been amazing listening to you, and thank you so much for sharing your story and, of course, your tips and expert opinion. Yes, on this very important subject. I've learned a lot, and I'm taking a lot home. I want to say thanks to Sean Anthony Robinson. Sean is a co-founder of Dr. Dyslexia Dude. Sean, you have a remarkable story and a truly inspiring story of how you were able to overcome your challenges and obstacles, especially with reading and learning. Thank you, Sean, for sharing your time, your story, and your passion with us this morning.
Thank you. I appreciate it. To my colleagues, too. Thank you.
Right. And also, finally, last but definitely not the least, Dr. Ken Van On, who is a neurodiversity coach and authentic coach. King, it's been a pleasure getting to know you, getting to hear your story, and also getting to hear of the work you do. And indeed, your opinion and your analysis of the issues this morning has been quite eye-opening. So we want to say thank you for your time, King. Dr. King Banon, thank you very much. All right. You've still not given us a secret to your young looks, but we will get that later. My name is Kofi. Well, I can't hear what you're saying. Okay. But anyway, my name is Kofi Bartels, broadcast journalist and communications expert with Nigeria Info FM. You can follow me on X at Kofi_Bartels, KOFI_BARTELS, at Kofi_Bartels, KOFI_BARTELS. And for those of you watching, please go online and give Dyslexia Nigeria a follow so that you can support the good work that they do. Thanks to Dyslexia Nigeria for having me here, and see you next time. Before I go, please permit me to introduce the moderator of our second panel. Like I said, that second panel is going to go a step further to look at how we can build resilience and also provide support strategies for those who are living with dyslexia. And Olaide Adediran is the moderator of the second panel. Olaide, good morning to you. It's good to see you again. The last time we saw was in the radio studio, and you did in fact, I was almost moved. I was actually really moved when you spoke about dyslexia, and I said, wow, how come I'm not talking about this every day? Olaide is a social impact specialist whose passion has seen her further access to education, inclusion, and decent work. Like I said, I felt that passion when I had a session with her some time ago. She's an executive director at Dyslexia Nigeria, where she works with various stakeholders to create an environment where individuals with dyslexia can thrive. Olaide works also with Acumen on workforce development in Africa, helping realize Acumen's vision of breaking millions of youth and women out of poverty through sustainable employment in dignified jobs. She holds a master's degree in education from Harvard, is a UK CIM certified executive function coach, and a certified cognitive coach. Ladies and gentlemen, I hand it over to none other than Olaide Adediran. Olaide, take it away.
Thank you so much, Kofi. I just want to be sure that you can hear me.
Yes, I can.
Great. Thank you. Thanks so much for leading the dialogue so far and for moderating that fantastic first panel. There was so much that was spoken about there that I loved. Sean said, you know, when kids are struggling, he would say, and when he was younger also, he would tell himself, I want to get this done and I really don't care how long it takes me. And I think that's a highlight also of a lot of what the panelists shared, that they're successful and that success has come from being resilient. And that's really what the second panel is about. It's about how do we build the skill set that it takes to bounce back from what is difficult and from challenging and tough times. And I have a great set of panelists to discuss that with me today. I'm going to introduce them briefly. We are talking about building resilience, strategies for support and advocacy of dyslexic individuals. I have with me Dr. Matthias Ochez. She's a licensed clinical and educational psychologist and founder of Thrive Care Ghana. With over a decade in mental health and educational psychology, she has worked with diverse institutions, including the SOS Herman Hema International College and major organizations like Deloitte and MasterCard Foundation. She's the co-founder of Mental Health Africa, and she's committed to promoting emotional wellness through therapy, counseling, consulting, and corporate workshops. So welcome, Dr. Matthias Ochez.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We have Dr. Shakira Olajobi, who's the founding president of the Association of Nigerian Educational Psychologists. She's a team lead at the Neurobite, and she's CEO of Brainy Educare. With certifications from the British Psychological Society and Harvard, she's an expert in cognitive profiling and emotional health. Dr. Olajobi directs the Outlier School and consults for the Universal Basic Education Commission. And she's also authored Emotional Wellness Kits during the pandemic, reaching audiences in 9 countries. Welcome, Dr. Alajobi. And finally, Mrs. Audrey Abayomi is a highly qualified and dedicated professional with an extensive background in mental health and personal development. She's a certified counselor and therapist and coach, and is therefore equipped to offer comprehensive support across various areas of mental health and personal growth to both children and adults. She's the founder of The Healing Place and has consulted at the Rainbow Specialist Medical Center as their consultant therapist, and worked at Constellation Coaching and Training as partner and lead therapist. Audrey is a dedicated advocate for destigmatizing mental illness in African communities and empowers individuals through compassionate care. Welcome, Mrs. Abayomi.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. So there's something I want to anchor from the first panelist's discussion that I think is a great place to start. Sean said he would say, you can cry, but you cannot quit. And Dr. Khan also said, you know, when people say you just have to work harder, she says also it's not just to be successful. The effort to build resilience is not just to be successful, but also to be happy. And I think those statements are already beginning to show that there's a lot that goes behind in the mind of an individual who's dyslexic, beyond the difficulty with oh, okay, that's okay, Mrs. Olajobi. So beyond the difficulties with learning to read and write, there's the mental health issues that are underlying that. So I'm going to start by asking everyone, if we could all, you know, take turns. What to you is the broader overview of resilience for dyslexic individuals that really paints a picture of the typical mental health state that they're predisposed to, and why is that resilience essential for their well-being? So I'm going to start with you, Ms. Olajobi, and then I'll go to Mr. Abayomi and then to Dr. Carol.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It's good to be here. Hello, everyone. Yes, my name is Shakira Olajobi, and I've worked as a practicing educational psychologist for about a decade and a half. And this means I basically work with children, educators, schools, and parents. For me, I think that it can be quite difficult living with dyslexia in an environment where you're not understood. I did listen to one of the participants who was talking about his frustration. And indeed, it can be, because we are in a community where, very unfortunately, there still isn't enough awareness, and a lot of children could easily get labeled as lazy, as uninterested, or even sometimes as oppositional, defiant, you know, all of those things, you know, just because they're dyslexic. So it's an environment that could expose the child to anxiety, to stress, to all of the other things that have been mentioned in the first panel. And it therefore becomes important to see resilience as a must-have for every child or every person living with dyslexia. Resilience is that ability to bounce back, because people would talk carelessly or would say things that could come off as very deflating for their self-esteem. So it's therefore important to have that resilience to keep, you know, focusing on the strengths, to keep getting that confidence to seek for help, to know who to talk to know what to do about it. Because you see, for me, the first thing that happens to a dyslexic person, especially in childhood, is confusion. They're confused. They're not sure. Why am I not getting it? Everyone else is. What is wrong with me? So there is a period of confusion before the child finally comes to terms. In fact, sometimes this coming to terms with reality might not happen until adulthood. I've seen children who struggled all through childhood, and then as adults, they heard someone say something about dyslexia and say, yes, that is what has been happening to me all my life. So they're confused for a long time. And then when they eventually hear about dyslexia and, you know, begin to think that, oh, this might be what is wrong with me. So there's really a lot of support that they need. And one of the things that we can do to help people who living with dyslexia to improve on their resilience is also to offer support, to not not be in denial, because sometimes you'd realize that the support systems are even the ones saying, no, stop saying that. There's nothing wrong with you. Just put your mind to it. You can do it. You can do it. And this person keeps saying, I'm not getting it. So I think it's important that we help to build a positive self-esteem, and then we also boost confidence and help them to focus on their strengths, because indeed they do have several other strengths, so that way they can feel equipped to get the intervention that's necessary to cope and to navigate through life.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Shakira. Okay, let's ask Dr. Carol, just your own introductory comments as well around this broader overview of resilience and why it's important.
Thank you so much. And I think I'll just kind of piggyback off what Mrs. Olojabi has been talking about. But I also like to, yes, resilience is this idea that we can bounce back from difficulties, right? Especially we're able to adapt to stresses, psychological, and are able to maintain a certain level of psychological well-being. Right. And when we talk about resilience and it being this idea of being able to bounce back, I like for us to think of resilience as, this thing that enables us to be able to walk through difficult situations, right? Because I think sometimes words like the idea of bouncing back from something can seem very large and looming, right? That no matter what you go through, you have this ability to kind of like just bounce back. Whereas resilience is really, and we'll talk about it as we go along, but resilience is really this idea, because no one is born resilient or not, right? It's a trait that you can learn and build. And I think that's a big part of what the conversation is here today. So there's this idea that people have the skills and the tools to walk through really difficult situations and maintain a certain level of psychological well-being. And especially with people living with dyslexia, like she just shared, a lot of it is just a lack of support because of a lack of understanding, confusion that leads to, sometimes poor self-image, because like she just shared, you're wondering, why is everybody else getting it and I'm not, right? A child is likely to conclude it means there's something wrong with me, right? And right from that point, their image and, self-esteem is already, taking a bit of a hit. Negative school experiences, right? Anxiety, frustration, depression, anger, all of these things that we can link to this idea of, I don't know what is happening to me, and I don't know where to turn to get support. And so, like she said, resilience is a critical factor. Because as much as we're equipping them with the tools to be able to cope with this learning challenge, it's also important that we recognize there's a whole psychological, emotional, social aspect of it. And we need to think about how do we equip them to also navigate that aspect. And I believe that's where resilience comes in for people living with dyslexia.
Thank you so very much for that. I continue to hear about the environment, the role of the environment, what the environment is doing. I'm hoping at some point you can talk about the internal dialogue as well, but at least for now, I'm hearing you talk about the environment a lot, anxiety, depression, frustration. Mrs. Abani, what is your take on the broader overview of resilience?
I really like what my colleague just said about going through with resilience. Because we do often hear people talk about children being very resilient, or children are always very resilient. But I think what we also must remember that no matter how resilient you say you are, when you're often knocked down by experiences, it will have an effect on you. And your strength, your emotional strength, or your mental capability, will get knocked. And the more knocks you take, the more your negative self-speak tends to come through, right? So going through, I think, is a really, really good definition for resilience, because we often talk about bouncing back. Like where we are is not okay. So we need to bounce back to where we were before. But where we are is okay, because if we're going through something, and we're having these negative self-speak, we don't understand what is going on. We can't understand what is being taught. So, for example, I had a client who he was he was dyslexic, and his junior brothers and sisters were already going far above him in education, and that was a huge impact. And it presented with depression and anxiety over other things that had nothing to do with school anymore. So by the time we got to the root cause, the root cause was the fact that he felt stupid and he didn't understand. He spent so much time going through work, going through school, trying to make sure that he really understood, but he just didn't understand. So a strong, really, really strong supportive system, I think, is the key to building resilience. Because when you're knocked down, the amount of people that hold you up makes a huge difference. If one person is holding you up, that's great. But if there are like 10 people holding you up, that's even better. You tend to stay up better and for longer. So your teachers are holding you, your parents are holding you, your friends are holding you, your siblings are holding you, everyone's holding you up. And that tends to build your resilience because you know that you're okay, even where you are at. There's no bouncing back to where you were. You're okay where you are at, if you get what I mean. So developing coping strategies to navigate your emotional challenges. When you feel down, you already have all these people holding you up. And it's not in a patronizing way to make you feel, oh, no, you're okay. You just need a little bit extra help. No. I think that's not what I mean when I say holding you up. So the support system where everybody understands what is happening. This person is an individual that learns slightly differently. That's it. That's basically what it is. And so we have to adapt to the way this person is learning. So once the teachers are educated, the parents are educated, they're coming to webinars like this, they're listening to people who have lived in the experiences, things that are happening, they will also get a better understanding. And in that understanding will help the people who are going through this. And that will build up their resilience because that's what they need, because they do need to have maybe slightly higher resilience, maybe you could say, but just like all of us, we need to have resilience in different aspects of our lives and different things that we're going through. So strong support system, totally agree. And I really love that definition of going through. In fact, I think from now on, I won't refer to resilience as bouncing back.
Thank you so very much for that. You're right, and I'm glad you picked that up. I also put that in capitals as going through and not bouncing back. And I think that also tied into some of the other things that you mentioned, that the support system is about people really understanding. And actually a conversation I had yesterday was around the fact that we all have quirks. We're all different ways. And for us to really support each other, we have to be able to understand and accept. And it's that acceptance that really helps with, when you mentioned that your client presented as depression, but then what was underlying was a root cause of feeling stupid. There is something about the lack of acceptance that perhaps comes from a lack of understanding, not only of the self, but from the community that stopped that from happening. So I think it leads to a second question, and I'm going to ask Mr. Ajobi about, which is, given your experience in emotional health education, what are some early signs of distress that educators and families can look for in dyslexic children? Those early signs of maybe feeling stupid that then present as something and become something else. What are some of those early signs?
Okay, thank you for your question. I'd say, before I begin to talk about the early signs, I'd say that, first of all, if we can just see emotional health the way we see physical health and realize that if a child has got rashes, if a child has got fever, we're not going to start asking, why? What is wrong with you? We're going to do something about it. So the same way there are early signs for a child who's getting distressed because of dyslexia. One of the first early signs is avoidance of reading, writing, or related tasks. Usually children should be eager to do these things, especially when it's fun and interesting. But when you see them avoiding it or they're reluctant to engage, you should realize that behavior, every behavior is actually like the end result of thoughts process. It's a continuum. So you're asking, why is this child exhibiting this behavior? Why is this child avoiding this? Why is this child reluctant to do this? You know, and he's not avoiding other things. Could this mean that there's something going on? Can I find out? Can I check? Instead of just assuming, oh, you're lazy, oh, this, all that. So that's the first early sign. A later early sign I'll say is negative self-talk. When children begin to say to themselves, I can't do this. I don't know it. At that time, the confusion has sort of transitioned into an acceptance of some sort. So they're like, I have tried so many times and it doesn't just work. So at this point, I just cannot do it. And they're telling you, no, I can't do it. I don't know it. Some would say, I don't know how to read. You know, I can't read, don't you? You know, by the time you start hearing this kind of things, because what the negative self-talk would eventually do is to puncture their self-esteem. And again, this is a red flag. Well, another thing that we can look out for is behavioral issues. So this kind of child may begin to misbehave. The child may begin to get so tricky, may have temper outbursts, or may do things that are just not regular. Again, misbehavior is to emotional health as rashes or fever is to physical health. But too many times, children get chastised for misbehavior because we think they're trying to get back or they're trying to prove a point, but they're actually trying to say, I need help. There's something wrong with me. So it's important to look out for misbehavior. And of course, sometimes signs can also be physical symptoms. You might have a child who's always having stomach ache when it's time to go to school or when it's time for exams or when it's time for a certain subject, or they may have headaches, or they may tell you, oh, I feel there's something wrong with me. I just don't feel fine. And then we say, oh, they're pretending. Why are you pretending? The truth is, even if, and that's what I say to educators and parents, let's even assume that the child is pretending. There is a reason for the pretense. Talk less of, in reality, we can have our emotional health impacting physical health, and it can be a real physical issue as a result of an emotional distress. So these are top signs that parents, educators, and other stakeholders need to look out for as signs of distress in children with dyslexia. Thank you
so very much. I mean, I saw everyone, I saw all of us sort of nodding our heads as you were saying that, because they're so familiar, many of these signs. I think, you know, what I really want to take away from what you said is that there's a reason for the behavior. And rather than addressing the symptoms, you know, where we typically would address the avoidance or address that they're, you know, pretending there's something wrong or they want to misbehave, that there is a reason for that. There's a root cause, and that root cause symptoms are really asking for help in one way or the other. Thank you so much for that. Dr. Carol, I'm going to then ask you from here, in your practice, what strategies have you seen to be most effective in helping individuals with dyslexia develop resilience? I mean, this is really a summary question. All of us have answers to this, but maybe I'll ask you for a few, and I know we'll build on them as we go.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I think I just want to say thank you to my colleague for just highlighting, you know, what she just did around, you know, misbehavior when it comes to children. Because, you know, we all see it a lot in our work in terms of caregivers, parents, teachers, just not understanding that when a child is behaving badly, they really are just trying to, you know, tell you, I need some help. And so I think that's one key takeaway, I think, for all of us. But like you said, there's an exhaustive list, but I'll tell you a story to kind of like start talking about some of the things that I have found are quite helpful. So I was working with a family, and you know, they had a preteen who, you know, a lot of what you just described, you know, bad behavior in school, very rebellious, you know, and eventually they did some assessments and, you know, was diagnosed with dyslexia. Now the family, so the clinic that did the assessment referred them to me for emotional psychological support for the whole entire family. And, you know, the parents met with me first and they came into my office first and said, you know, they just wanted to let me know that they haven't told the child about the diagnosis and they don't want the child to know. Right. And I'm like, why? Because they didn't want to put into their heads that there's something wrong with them, and they also don't think they'll understand, right? And I share that story to say I worked with a family for a while, and one of the things that we often do to children especially that I don't think is right, is when they receive diagnosis, around different learning disabilities or learning challenges, it's important that the child, in a way that they can understand, is told exactly what is happening to them or what it is, right? The child needs to know, like we just shared earlier on, that there is a different way in which you learn. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you, but it's important for you to know so that it clears up some of the confusion we've been talking about. Because the confusion is so damaging. One of the things I found that's very helpful is when everyone in the situation knows clearly what it is. So the child involved, the individual, the parents, support structures, school, family, grandparents, anybody who has access and cares for the child should understand what dyslexia is and what it is not. To, for example, understand that it has to do with reading and writing. Because one of the things we come across a lot is also people believing that it has to do with intelligence, right? So, for example, people understanding that what it is and what it is not, right? So everyone involved should have a good understanding. I think when that is in place, it's very, very, very effective, right, in helping the individual, because then everyone that surrounds them knows, okay, they have these needs and we have to be intentional about providing those needs, right? And then also very practically, connecting them with, the support they need to help them, the skills and the tools to manage their reading and language challenges, right? That very core thing is important, whether it's in school, whether it's in after school programs, whatever interventions. That I've also found when that is in place is very effective in helping them develop resilience, right? Because with those skills and tools, they are learning, okay, I may not be able to do it the way, Jane, who sits next to me, does, but I'm also learning the tools and I'm growing confidence and that sense of agency, but I'm learning how I can do it is really helpful with resilience. Having safe spaces where they can express their feelings without judgment, right? And this is so important, or where they can express their feelings without being told, that their feelings don't matter, or without being met with judgment is so important. I have individuals who come into sessions and sometimes all they want to do is vent about the frustrations of how different their life is, the frustrations about the challenges they're having, and giving them that safe space to just be able to vent out helps them process a lot of the difficult emotions, right? And helps them build resilience. Also, being able to help them and teach them how to set realistic goals for themselves and manage their expectations, right? Because the reality is, because they learn differently, their expectations and goals have to be different. And in this, I am super intentional about not using the word lowering expectations for them, but using the word modifying expectations, so that they know that it's not that we think you are less than, so we are giving you a lowered set of expectations, but you have a modified set of expectations because you have a different way of learning. But sort of like helping them understand that they need to set goals that are realistic for them so that they don't get into a loop of failing because they are setting unrealistic goals, right? And helping them to recognize and rejoice and kind of like celebrate their successes, right? When they do something well, when they reach a milestone, when they're able to successfully do something, just making a big deal out of it, because we understand that for them compared to the next person, it might be a little harder to do, right? And then also helping them nurture a positive view of self. Like we've just said, this particular challenge doesn't mean you are not amazing, doesn't mean you're not capable of doing amazing things. It's just a matter of discovering what that is for you, right? So helping them discover that, nurturing that positive sense of self. And then also just helping them make connections, sometimes with other people who are having the same experiences. Because sometimes what we do is when we have, in my clinic, when we have several families or several individuals dealing with, the same, whether it's dyslexia or autism, whatever it might be, we organize support groups so that they can come together and just having that sense of, I'm not the only one dealing with this. Having someone explain something and you can immediately, that's exactly how I feel. You get exactly how I feel. That can also really help them build resilience. I'm sure my colleagues will build on this, but these are some of the strategies that I have found are most effective when working with individuals with dyslexia.
Thank you so much, Dr. Carol. That was very, very a very tight response. Understand what it is and what it's not. I think that was very critical. And also accept, adapt, thrive, and go through. And that going through, really telling them what it is, not keeping them in the dark about what is going on with them, and giving them tools, a safe space, the community we spoke about, setting, modifying expectations. I think that's something I hope that further and we can talk about what that actually looks like, what it means to modify, not lower, even for teachers themselves, for parents, seeing what everyone else is doing and feeling that something else is happening with the child. But the part I wanna link to Mrs. Abayam is that positive view of self that you talked about. And it brings us back to that internal dialogue, going away from what is happening externally to the internal dialogue. So from your own experience, what personality traits or internal dialogues or life views do you think make individuals more prone to stress and anxiety? And then what tools do you recommend that can be used to manage those as well?
Are you talking to me?
Yes, to you.
Right. Okay. So we use CBT techniques, and in CBT we talk a lot about personality traits, perfectionism, high sensitivity to criticism, people-pleasing tendencies. We also talk about internal dialogues, like catastrophic thinking, things like, I'm just useless. I just can't do anything. We also talk about all or nothing thinking. So viewing things in extremes, like I'm a failure. If I don't get this done, I'm just, and also using CBT, we also talk about things like should statements. I should be able to do this. Why can't I? I should be able to do this. Also in internal dialogues, mind reading, jumping to conclusions, and self-critical thoughts. CBT, we also talk about core beliefs. So what are your core beliefs? What do you really believe is happening? External locus of control, believing that something other than your own actions are contributing and leading to these feelings. Fear of rejection, overemphasis on achievement, I think, is something also that, equating your self-worth to your productivity or your success. And then low self-efficacy, believing that you don't have the ability to handle life's the challenges that life throws at you. So these are the specific things that we speak about in CBT, and these traits, and they're often interconnected, and they create these feedback loops that reinforce stress, anxiety. So through CBT and counseling, we can work to identify these things in individuals, and we can reshape these patterns. Like my colleague said, modifying and managing expectations is one of the key patterns that we need to do when we're dealing with people who are going through anything using the CBT technique, or not just going through dyslexia, but for dyslexia right now, modifying and managing expectations, because like our other colleagues have said, this is not something that happens to you and that it will end. This is a lifelong thing. You have to be able to manage your expectations. You have to be able to modify your expectations and know that you learn in a slightly different way. So, for example, using my first example to the young man that I was counseling, through counseling and talking to him through counseling and therapy, I noticed he was doing his O-levels for the third time, which already is traumatizing, because you're trying to do your O-levels the way everybody else was trying to do it, like reading and studying. And I asked him what he enjoyed, and he said he enjoyed watching movies. And so I asked him if he had ever tried watching Romeo and Juliet, which is what he was supposed to be studying at the time, watching it on like the movie on YouTube, like a Shakespearean YouTube video, and he said he had never tried that. And so I suggested that he try that, and he tried that, and he really enjoyed it. And when he went back to look at the whatever he was reading, he had a greater understanding of what he was reading. So, for example, someone like me, I tend to think in analogies. I don't really I think in pictures. I always say to people, I am not dyslexic. I do, I can't claim to be dyslexic, but I think everybody has a different way of thinking. So for another example is that I have a brother who's an architect, and he can see things aerially, like from the I can't see things from the top like that. He can read designs, and I don't know the concept of space. I'm not really good at that, but he's really good at that. He can walk into a room and redesign it in his head. So we all think differently. And I think if we can kind of keep promoting this thought about all of us having different ways that we think and different ways that we navigate the world, there would be less of a stigma on, oh, you're dyslexic. Because from the example that my colleague gave, Dr. Carol, when she said that, I can't remember which colleague now, when she said that the parents didn't want to tell the child. So that means that there's already this unbelief, this core belief that dyslexia is already like a bad thing, or is already something that is, would scar the child, or thinking that, which I had a similar thing with my example as well, the parents thinking that the child would get lazier because they could go on the crutch of being dyslexic, which is not the case. Normally, with an understanding of your diagnosis comes a realization of what is happening and an acceptance of using other tools in which you can help yourself to read better. And just like Sean said, I mean, he started reading better at 18, but notice that Sean said that he still went through high school. He still graduated. He was pushed through high school with not having the tools that he needed. And it took his support system, being his mom, to be able to ask for help from a professor, and started with a dictionary of all things. So, it does take a village, and with having these personality traits, internal dialogues, life views, it does take a village to help with, I don't want to call it recovery, because there's nothing to recover from. It's just for you to be able to navigate these different waters and how to navigate these different waters. So it's just for navigation, I guess. And CBT would help, because one of the key things we would do is modify and manage your expectations, first of all. That's one of the key things. And some people, when we identify the personality traits, we identify the internal dialogues, we look at the core beliefs, we're able to come back to you and say, okay, is this really true? Is there evidence for this being true? When you're having catastrophic thinking that I'm useless, you can ask, is this really true? So those are the kind of things that we use CBT techniques for in dealing with people with dyslexia, and dealing with people generally. It's not even just dealing with people generally.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bami. That was really detailed. People pleasing, catastrophic thinking, all or nothing. There's actually a social media challenge on at the moment about perspectives. What's the other perspective? I actually thought it was one of the most positive challenges I've seen that would help a lot of people view things in a more positive light and get rid of some of these damaging internal dialogues that do manifest externally as well. And I think some other concrete things you said about helping to understand, accept, adapt that we said earlier is, this the overemphasis on achievement. And I think even as a parent, understanding that the effort is really what matters, and it's not necessarily just the outcome. It's not the label of it's an A, it's a B, it's a C. It's the effort that has gone into that, and then being able to work with what is that person's best is really what's important. And also you talked about multi-sensory learning techniques, knowing more about how a person learns, and then modifying those expectations. So thank you so very much for that critical contribution. And then you said at the end, it takes a village. And I want to come to Ms. Zola Jobi on that, because in your role as president of the Association of Nigerian Educational Psychologists, it does take a village. What initiatives have you seen or led that support advocacy for mental health and dyslexia?
Okay, thank you. So the association has been on for about 3 years now, and I must say that we've done much more in the area of advocacy, internal advocacy, than anything else, and I'll explain that in a bit. So in Nigeria, as we find, there's a huge, huge gap between the study of educational psychology and the practice of educational psychology. We have over 20 universities in Nigeria that offer educational psychology at both master's and PhD levels. But what we find is that the average graduate of educational psychology is in the classroom teaching, which is not such a bad idea, but they do not know that they have the work out there to do. I mean, I've come across even doctoral students of educational psychology who could not as much as pronounce dyslexia, talk less of sometimes and notes. Pronounce it, then you know that they have probably never heard about it, talk less of knowing what it is, how to assess or diagnose, or how to help with intervention plans. So that's what we've focused on majorly, but nonetheless, we have actually done school outreach. We've gone to schools to talk about learning disabilities. And of course, dyslexia is by far one of the most common learning disabilities. And we're also having ongoing conversations with the government, both at state and federal levels. About a year ago, we adopted a school. It's a public school. And what we're doing is, excuse me, we have members who go into the school to do like screenings for the students, identify the students who may have learning disabilities, including dyslexia, and then we begin to help with them and holding them and helping them through navigating whatever challenge that it is. So we also have that going on. We haven't done a lot in collaboration, but I'm excited, myself and my team, to work with Dyslexia Nigeria in the nearest future on some of these initiatives, because then again, we know that collaboration is key. We've also worked in the area of parental support, because you see a lot of times parents are overwhelmed. They do not know what to do. We've come across parents who knew there was something wrong, who wanted to do something about it, but they didn't know where to go. So we've seen parents who went to hospitals, talking to a medical doctor, and the medical doctor cannot really, I've seen even children who've been sent to go for all sorts of testing, go do an MRI, go do this, go do that, because the doctor is trying to help. But you see, most times the doctor will just say, oh, don't worry, it's just a delay, or maybe the school is not good enough. And then the parents keep moving from school A to school B to school C, and something isn't just right. And some of the parents are smart enough to realize that I have a child in the same school, or I have 2 other children in the same school. How come these other children aren't having the same issues? Could it be that there's something peculiar about this child? So we've also done parental support by providing counseling services for parents. We've also done quite a number of programs like this to enlighten parents, to tell them about the signs and the symptoms of dyslexia, and of course, to reach out if they have any more concerns. We're also currently working on a directory so that when they go to the website, they can access the nearest educational psychologist to them, because Nigeria is a big country and we need them to, in their own state. We've had people call us from different states where we do not currently have members, asking for this resource and that resource. And there wasn't much that we could do. In some cases, we've had even parents who've had to fly to another part of the country to be able to access help. So one of the things that we're currently working on is the directory for people to be able to reach and get resources and reach us as easily as possible. Yes, so I'd say that basically these are some of the things that the association has done. But like I said, more importantly, we're trying to raise awareness so that educational psychologists themselves know what they need to do and get equipped with the necessary skill set to be able to help children out there who are dyslexic, and to empower them with the competence and the skill sets that it takes to be successful despite learning differently. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for that. That was very detailed. I think it's really great to hear how comprehensive the work you're doing is across different parts of what makes up the community we've been talking about. And also starting with the understanding that if even those who are in a position to provide support don't understand the foundational elements of what it is, we're never going to get anywhere. I'm really happy also to hear about the national demand for help, for resources, leading to building a directory. It does mean that we're getting somewhere, and that our efforts, continued effort, will take us where we want to be. Thank you so much for that. We have 2 more questions, and then we'll wrap up the session. I wish we could be here all day, but in the interest of time, Dr. Carol, I'm just going to ask to just build on what Ms. Alajobi has said. I know you've also worked with mental health organizations. Can you give maybe one specific policy or program that you think could be introduced to increase support for mental health for dyslexic individuals across Africa?
Thank you so much. And you know, I was just resonating with so much of what you were sharing, Ms. Olajobi, because the situation in Ghana is even more dire, right? And I do know families sometimes that fly out to Nigeria to get support, because you know the point you made about the gap between the study of educational psychology and the practice is so real for us here in Ghana. And in Ghana, it goes even deeper, because it just isn't, educational psychology is not even seen as a lucrative career, right? So there's very little interest in it. So even the study of it before we can get to how we translate the knowledge we have into practice, you know, we have a long way to go. But it's really, really exciting to hear about a lot of what is happening in Nigeria. Like I said, I know a lot of families that access Nigeria from Ghana to get support. But I think a lot of the interventions and policies, you know, have to be around a lot of what we've talked about. I think first and foremost around just education, right? Just educating the larger public about what this is, you know, what learning challenges like dyslexia, and others like it, what they are, and once again, what they are not. And just helping people understand so that some of that stigma starts to reduce. Because stigma is one of the things that also keep people from being able to access support, right? So I think policies around just educating, you know, communities, educating schools, educating educators, because I think one of the other important things that we see, especially here in Ghana, I don't know about my colleagues, is that within schools, educators, right? First of all, we have very, very few teachers who are specially trained, you know, for children with special needs, and even just educators have no idea what this is. So the people who are in the classroom daily with these kids, who are supposed to be responsible for their care and their learning, themselves don't have the training, don't have the understanding, don't have the adequate tools to be able to support these kids. So I think policies around that as well, looking at strengthening a lot of the special needs programs we have, you know, in our Department of Education, I think is important. And just even thinking about the fact that all teachers should get some foundational training when it comes to differently abled children, right, in terms of their learning. Because the reality now is there are lots of children, right, that are neurodivergent, learn differently. And so there should be some basic, I think, training that every educator has. I think those kinds of policies are important. And then also educational initiatives that, you know, focus on comprehensive reading interventions, you know, to provide support for children with dyslexia, I think is important. And then, yes, also some platform where families can go to access help, right? One of the organizations that I work with, Mental Health Africa, you know, have set up a directory, but the directory is it's not necessarily focused on getting support with individuals for dyslexia, just more so general mental health support. But sort of like having platforms like that, because a lot of times you hear people say, I noticed this, but I didn't, like you were saying, I don't know where to go. Where do I go? Who do I call? How do I get help for this? So having those platforms where people know, okay, once I access this space, I know I can get the contact information, or I know I can reach someone who can connect me with somebody else. I think those are some of the things that would go a long way, I think, for the entire continent, really.
Thank you very much. I fully agree with you. Again, coming back to the comprehensive approaches that we need to build the community we're talking about. I know we have 2 or 3 more minutes to finish on the half hour. I'm going to ask Mr. Bayomi, before I ask for one more takeaway from everyone, as a community that we've been speaking about, how can we create an empathetic environment that encourages individuals with dyslexia to seek help? I know we've been talking about how people can provide help, but we know we're still in a context where, where many people still say, toughen up, just deal with it. And people feel it's not far gone enough to speak up. But what can we do to build an environment where people feel comfortable to speak up and seek for help?
I think what we can do, the first thing we can do is education. We need to educate. We need to offer workshops just like we're doing now. We need resources. We need to help everyone understand because education will demystify dyslexia, and it will demystify and dispel myths around dyslexia. For example, the myth that the person is not intelligent, right? So those are the kind of things that we should do concerning awareness, and also using inclusive language. Instead of calling people like dyslexics, for example, it's almost sort of like there's something wrong. So individuals with dyslexia, just like if you had somebody who had a rash, you would just say this person has a rash. You wouldn't call him a rasher. So I mean, encouraging open conversation and normalize support seeking. So I'm just delighted to hear about everything that's going on in Nigeria about, seeking support, safe spaces for expression, and normalizing therapy and counseling, because often it's during therapy and counseling that we can find the underlying cause of what is going on. Just because this person is presenting as depressed and you can't find the reason, we will, through therapy and counseling, we will be able to find an underlying cause, especially when they're preteens, they're children, and you want to know what's going on, why are they behaving like this, especially if there's a comorbidity like ADHD involved in that. We need to find out what's going on. Providing accessible tools and resources. I think that's really, really essential. Just like she said, that she creates my other colleagues have said about creating support groups, emphasizing strengths and their growth potential, and celebrating progress. Very, very, very important. And equipping parents and educators. I think we need to go away from the 1930s way of training teachers. We need to understand that we have neurodiversity. We need to understand that we have individuals that have dyslexia. And so having it as a foundation, as a basic part of their training, I think it's essential. Making sure that their language as well, when they're speaking to the children, is very, very inclusive. And the people who have dyslexia are not meant to feel less than or necessarily separated from the rest of the people or from the rest of the children. And I think all these things will advocate for a policy and a cultural change, especially in Africa, especially in Nigeria, Ghana, in Africa in general. Will advocate for a cultural change in where we can understand that these things are just not normal. It can happen to anybody. And so in doing that, we just raise awareness in the broader community as well, and encourage self-compassion and resilience building with our teachers, because our teachers, as much as we don't like to admit it, they spend a lot of time with our children. So we must be able to go to that sector as well to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, making webinars like this part of their training. It's easy to just do a video and make sure that the teachers can see webinars like this as part of it. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be massive trainings or going. We can do really, really simple things to just bring an awareness, just bring it to the forefront, and so that we know that this is what is happening now and this is what we need to do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bayomi. And honestly, we are at time. We didn't even get to ask some questions. I know some people have been trying to get through with questions, but it appears the chat was closed. What I can say is we will summarize this, send this out to everyone who registered, and include answers to the questions that have come in, so we can have a chance to answer your questions. I'm going to ask everyone one sentence you want us to go away with. Not one full thought that comes in 10 sentences, one sentence. So if I could start with Ms. Olajobi, and then one sentence from Dr. Carol, one sentence from Mr. Bayomi, and then we'll close out. Thank you.
One sentence is honestly very hard, but I'll try. I'd say acceptance. Begin from acceptance, focus on support, focus on strengths, celebrate small successes, and finally, believe. I think that's my one sentence. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Carol.
I would say that you cannot support something that you don't know or understand. And so educate yourselves about it, whether you are the one living with it or you're supporting, you're in a support role for someone with dyslexia. Educate.
Thank you, Mr. Bayomi.
Dr. Carl stole my sentence. So in order for us to know, in order for us to have a cultural change, in order for us to be able to impact on policy, we need to educate. We need to know what is going on. There needs to be a massive awareness. Educate, educate, educate.
Thank you. Educate, educate, educate. And remember, children are always very resilient, but no matter how resilient you are, when you are knocked down severely, your negative self-speak can come through. We need to go through, not bounce back, understand, accept, adapt, thrive, and build a truly supportive community. Thank you so much for being wonderful panelists. I really enjoyed speaking with you today. It was great to learn from you. And I hope that we can reconnect again soon and then share all this learning with everyone who registered to attend. Thank you so much. Mr. Kofi Bartos, over to you.
You're muted.
Yeah, not all.
Thank you so very kindly, Olaide Didiron rather, for that wonderfully handled and moderated panel. And of course, we talked about building resilience and support strategies. And also special thanks to all the panelists, Dr. Carol Matthias Chase, educational psychologist, Shakira Eniola Olajobi, founding president of ENEP, and Audrey Abayomi, who is a certified counselor, therapist, and life coach. Thoroughly enjoyed listening to you. And of course, educate is the word out there to spread awareness in order to build resilience and, of course, support those with dyslexia. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been looking forward to getting our keynote speech from none other than Dr. Neil Alexander Passey. And of course, I'm glad to announce that we have the video by Dr. Neil Alexander Passey, who himself is identifies himself as dyslexic. He has over the last 20 years specialized in emotional experience and is had of having a learning difference rather. And remarkably, he's published at least 15 books and 12 peer review papers in the field of dyslexia and neurodiversity, looking at correlations with mental health, success, career, family, creativity, parenting, and marriages. Amazing body of work that he has done. So let's quickly take our keynote address from Dr. Neil Alexander Passey.
Welcome to this keynote chat about dyslexia and mental health, based on my book. It is a chance for us to create a debate about the emotional and the coping needs of people with dyslexia or dyslexic people. I am Dr. Neil Alexander Pass. Okay, about me, I'm dyslexic. I was diagnosed at 13 years old following many years of being blamed for not learning as per my siblings, just not being able to learn in school, and the added tutoring support for my parents just not working. In school, I found I was very good at art and design, not so great at writing and spelling and memory. So I left for 5 years in art college, came out with a degree in graphics, worked in the design realm for about 20 years, and then I wanted to be prepared for my own children, so I began to do research into dyslexia and the emotional side, so the human side. I think it's better saying human side rather than the emotional side. 14 years ago, I retrained as a teacher to work in schools, just going back to my first degree. But at present, I work in a sixth form college, assessing students 3 or 4 times a day, every day, trying to get them the support that they need for their exams. And really, it is about creating learning profiles for them with their strengths, their areas of difficulty, and then what are things we're able to give them to reduce these barriers. The barriers for them to show their potential. So that could be more time, laptop use, spell checker, scribe, rest breaks, and various prompter, fidget toys, coloured overlays. So many things to really support their learning. I am also that I'm a inclusion expert for the Department of Education, and I'm a researcher and author of more than 15 books on dyslexia, mental health and success. My PhD is in dyslexia, school-based trauma and post-school success. So here are some of my books. You will see that to the top left is surviving school, and it really is about surviving school. It's helping those with dyslexia cope in a school-based environment where really everything that they struggle with is celebrated. The ability to read, write, and spell. The books to the right are on depression, and also dating, marriage, and obviously parenthood. All my books reflect me. So I had depression as a child, and so I wanted to research if that was normal. turned out it was normal for a person with dyslexia. Then I was dating. I got married and had two sets of twins. So I wrote a book about being a parent with dyslexia. But the book to the middle, the blue one on successful dyslexia, there was a point where I wanted to find out why there were some dyslexics that could do well, like myself, and obviously others struggled. So the book looks at these keys of what worked and why, and whether there was still trauma within those that we would call successful. So having a degree to some thought, what was their marker? I will be successful if I gain a degree. And then you've got others who will say, well, I've gained the degree, but I can't find a job. So therefore, I wouldn't class myself being successful. So it really varies. But this is a talk on obviously mental health. The book to the middle left, the white cover, you will see to the bottom there some obviously dyslexic based fiction and a thriller. So the dyslexic virus is a thriller. Quite fun to write. Okay, my current focus is crime. Just writing about the school to prison pipeline, and this is the pipeline of school-based failure leading to crime and then prison. So my first book that came out last year was on dyslexia, neurodiversity and crime. This year, or in July 24, ADHD and crime was published, and now I am about to publish next year the next book on obviously autism and crime. But all these are neurodiverse learning needs or learning and obviously differences, and in their own way creates failure within school, and that failure isn't being addressed and supported, and therefore it is easier for them to be segregated, and that places them in the hands of drugs, of crime, and obviously gangs, really. So what is dyslexia? Well, it's a Greek word, and it's obviously difficulty with reading. However, it's not just reading, is it? It's writing and spelling, affecting handwriting, organization, memory, and also coordination. Handwriting, you will see there messy. Why? Well, looking through a work, you normally find that the worst or the most mess is the crossing out, is because they are checking for spelling or changing their grammar. It's also messy because it is camouflaging spelling. It's camouflaging the words that they can't obviously spell. And really, this is the beginning to show you how there is a certain level of avoidance there, which is driving this poor mental well-being. So the effects of dyslexia is difficulty to read and write fast, making sense of what you read, and then trying to remember what you have read. And those three bits are obviously key. Difficulty with tying shoelaces, messy handwriting we've spoken about, hearing. So spelling is based on hearing. So if you can't hear well, you will struggle to spell. It's because without knowing the rules, you will try to decode a word. So I was watching a cooking show last night, and there was phyllo pastry. So phyllo, if you is spelt with an F, but if you look at phyllo and the name Philip starts with a PH. So really, should phyllo be PHILO, or should it be how it is spelled, FILO? Again, you will. There is some logic there, and also letters being reversed. S's being Z's, P's being Q, threes being threes being five. So several of these, and these cause it to be difficult to read what dyslexics write, and this causes the young child to struggle to the point that they aren't sure if they should just give up. Why try? I mean, you will see there a child here with a blank sheet of paper, having to commit to paper, having to commit your thoughts down is really obviously hard. And this is why using bullet points to a first plan work is really good. And yeah, but white a laptop to me allows you to brainstorm, to get your thoughts down, and to write and have the bullet points, and then to draft those see paragraphs, and then see chapters. To me, a laptop has freed me from a lot of the barriers, and then you press print and it comes out perfect, and no one would know. They wouldn't know I've used spell checker. They wouldn't know I have used Grammarly. They wouldn't know I've used text to speech. They wouldn't know that there are 3 or 4 drafts to it. They won't know. All that you are judged on in this world is the finished result. You press print, comes out, and it looks perfect. Amazing. So the effects are difficulty to read, and to read fast, making sense of what you read, the facts, messy handwriting, and phonics. And now we will start with the coping side of it. Avoidance. Avoidance is huge. And they avoid to maintain their self-esteem. They avoid so that they don't look stupid. And they would rather be sent out of class as the class clown or messing about than get 0 or 1 or 2 from a test. It's about saving face, and it's easier to avoid. However, schools are quite obviously harsh and quite cliquey. So if you're the ones getting A's, you will be in that top group. These problem is that a dyslexic orally in a class will be on the A's and B's, because verbally they're able to talk about subjects and to show their knowledge. But as soon as they write it down, they will look like a D or E grade LMC student, because they struggle to get those thoughts down. And all of this causes a fair bit of frustration in the young child, but also the teacher. The teacher can't make sense of it. They say, well, the child knows it, just put it down, but they can't put it down. And that's where the barrier, and that should be one of the earliest signs to go, aha, why? There must be a reason why. And it could be dyslexia. But the child is struggling, and you will see there self-doubt and learned helplessness. No matter how much they try to revise those names or dates for a test, they will forget it in seconds. It takes 10 plus repetitions of a normal person might take 5 or 6 times to read through and obviously something for it to be embedded into their heads to pass the test. Someone with dyslexia needs 10 times that. So if it takes a normal person or a neurotypical person, we shouldn't say normal because no one's not normal. So if it takes a neurotypical person 5 times, that it will take a dyslexic 50 times. So yeah, again, it's about avoiding, coping, using these smaller words. The question is that you should be looking through a child's work and seeing they're using all these small words. Do they know longer words? Verbally, yes. They will know them, but they can't spell them. So therefore, they play it safe. They play it safe by using smaller words that they know, because it's easier being seen as having a neat piece of work than something scribbled out. Is that they might try 3 or 4 times to write that a word, and then from there they would just give up. Self-doubt comes in, relying on the others. So a lot of dyslexics, they need to have their work checked by a parent or adult, someone who will support them and say, does this make sense? Or read the work back to them. These PC is great with this. It's called text to a speech. So it reads back. Does it make sense? Does it need to be changed around? And the dyslexic child isn't cured. As soon as they leave school, it isn't cured. No, it's not. It moves into adulthood. And the avoidance that worked as a child, it doesn't quite work to work as a adult, because they need to get a job. And isolation stops them from going on dates and getting married and being a parent. A lot of the research I read was 80% of children leave school without a diagnosis of dyslexia. 80% is a huge amount being missed in school. And without that diagnosis, they will be seen to do odd things. I've known people to lose their homes because they've not paid the mortgage or rent on time, or the bills, is because it is it is a common thing to not pay bills on time, because they will forget the deadline. The bill comes in and they go, oh yeah, fine, I will do that tomorrow. They will forget it in 15 minutes until you will have piles of bills, and this is a really common thing. Piles, they don't file, they just have rising piles around them, by the side of their bed, on their desk, in their lounge, in the kitchen, various places, just piles of stuff to deal with. And because it's reading based, they will put it off. A lot of parts of us just don't get it, because it doesn't make sense. Again, verbally really strong, but on paper really weak. And you will see there these last bullet point, PTSD from school. So the ability to go into school for your own child, it seems a fairly normal thing to do, that you will go in there, see the parents, see their work, go there for prize days, for plays, various things. Someone with a dyslexia would normally have trauma from school, such harsh memories that they will go back once in the primary school. They will sit on the small chairs, smell the floor cleaner being talked down by a teacher, and that gets them angry and upset. More so when their own child is struggling, could be with dyslexia as well, and the teacher is doing nothing. They say, oh yeah, he needs a bit more time, he's a bit immature, and those words, and the parent says, well, I had similar things myself, I'm dyslexic. And they said, well, and the school will go, well, we don't use such terms here, we aren't sure yet, we will watch. They won't watch. So the same failure with the parent could be going on with their child, and this creates in the adult depression, fear, memories of school, aversion to word-based jobs or reading letters, avoidance, trauma, and really it is a lot there to try and cope with. How will they cope? Well, with withdrawal from social groups, depression, and self-harming, and some sadly commit suicide. The true levels of suicide are unknown. Why? Because for it to be logged as a suicide relating to dyslexia, they would need to leave a suicide note, and a suicide note requires writing. So the last thing that they will do before they commit suicide is to be traumatized again with the need to write why, and to find the right words. So it isn't listed, but self-harming, about feeling good, and obviously having control of their own bodies is where the risks and the food self-harming comes from. Sadly, food-based and drinking and drug-based self-harming is fairly common. But it really is about feeling good. You do these things to feel good, and therefore why are people feeling that need to feel good? It's because they are obviously struggling, could be in the workplace or with their own obviously skills. So there is a lot of need there. And again, as I was talking about these suicide note, it's easier saying I'm fine rather than trying to explain what's going on, why they are struggling, why they are looking to obviously commit suicide. So I'm sad, I'm depressed, I'm hurt, I'm confused, I'm loved. They will struggle to first find the words and also spell it correctly. So it's easier to use short words saying I'm fine. Oh, sorry, I think I have gone too far. Hold on. Why? It's because they feel misunderstood. They feel alone. They're wanting out of their torture. They're feeling worthless because they can't get a job as per their family and their friends, and they can be stuck in a family of dyslexic. So a chap for a research project who I know severely dyslexic. He thought that he would find the way out. No, he thought that he would find a way of having non-dyslexic children. So he married a classics and obviously graduate. I had 4 children. All of them turned out to be dyslexic. His wife is quite funny because she says that she feels like a muggle within a family of obviously wizards. All of them have this special bond. So they get all the same things and they think in a similar way. So it really is, there is a different mindset. So coming back to the book on success, there's trauma in both groups, the successful group and the less successful group. Please note it wasn't me grading them. They did it themselves. They were the ones that called themselves successful or not. The motivations for a success and the keys are quite lovely. The motivations for success is to prove others wrong. One guy who's a very big he's a multi-millionaire. He vowed to go back into school within 5 years in a Rolls Royce and to tell them that they got it wrong, and the guy did it. He drove back within 4 years in a Rolls Royce, and he went up to his teachers and he said, "You got me wrong. You got me wrong. You didn't get me. You didn't know. You misjudged my value." And that huge chip on the shoulder drives many. However, some of that you will find in prison or obviously struggling with jobs would obviously have that same trauma of being put down and think, well, I'm useless. I've got no worth. I will never have a worth. And that drives them or drills them down to a spiral of depression. So the same trauma can do both things, but there are different factors there as well. And the book talks about the keys for success, and one of those is a parent who will support you, who will judge you on your effort and not on the outcome. It is about language. It is like praising someone. You worked really hard, okay? So you worked really hard is different to, wow, you got an A, well done. Getting an A is talking about the result, how the child got the A isn't the big thing. It's a result, and that means that a child who will get a D or E will feel really bad. Okay, rather praise the effort. You worked really hard. Well done. It means that the results will come slowly, maybe, but they will come. So to finish the talk, I hope you enjoyed this. My books are available online. There's a website there as well, and also if you go to ResearchGate, you are able to see my research papers for free. So and enjoy the rest of the conference, and thank you for joining me for this chat. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Wow, wasn't that remarkable? That I say is more than a keynote session. It's a deep dive into the issues within dyslexia, surrounding dyslexia, and of course preferring solutions as well. If we were in a hall, I'd have asked everyone to give a standing ovation to Dr. Neil Alexander Passy, who sent in his recorded keynote session. So deep, and he talked about a lot of things. But he, of course, the number of books that he's written is amazing. 15 books, and they all have, different things that they are focusing on. Very important for people to learn about dyslexia and also learn about learning difficulties and special needs children. Amazing. Of course, he talked about his papers, which he says we can go to ResearchGate and that we can learn about. Amazing session there. And kudos to Dyslexia Nigeria for bringing Dr. Neil Alexander Passy away. He said that dyslexics often face challenges. And he also talked about what is dyslexia. He talked about the science of dyslexia. He talked about the dyslexia in the classroom, and of course did give his own experience. He did say that someone with dyslexia needs 10 times more the effort to be able to 10 times more repetitions, let me say, in order to embed any knowledge that he or she is learning. So if someone who is not dyslexic has to repeat 10 times, then the dyslexic will need to repeat it 100 times, and it therefore shows the hard work that dyslexics put in just to be able to learn and to embed knowledge. And that's why he ended by saying, praise the effort, not the result. praise the effort, not the result. Yes, you can look at the result and you can encourage for the result, but the effort must not be overlooked, which is very important. And dyslexics put in much more work than the rest of us to be able to learn and excel. And we can see examples of all those who are excelling who've joined us today. He also talked about the emotional cost of avoidance. He talked about the fact that, dyslexics are also verbally very strong, even if they're not strong in written or in reading aspects where they're really weak. I want to thank him very much and to thank all of you for your time as well. We want to take some of the questions and contributions coming our way. We have an audience on YouTube. They've been very active. We also have an audience on Zoom, really active as well in the Q&A box there. I can see some comments on YouTube. I see Ade Lowo, Ade Bumiti. Okay, Ade Bumiti says a lot of insights coming out about dyslexia that I'm getting to know for the first time. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. People can be hard on certain children. And it's not just about the children, please. Let me point that out. That's what I've learned today. But people can be hard on certain children without bothering to investigate what is responsible for the challenges. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Ade Lowo. Blessing Ike says, I struggled so much in school and never knew I was dyslexic. Never had that name until I got to my university at my 30 or 300 level, and we were taught one of the courses that also I began to analyze myself. So many comments over there on YouTube. And of course, you can go to our live stream there to see them. Of course, we have questions and comments. I hear the questions are already being answered on Zoom. Am I right? Yes, indeed. So we will move straight to a short video on the work of Dyslexia Nigeria. Please stay with us.
Dyslexic. Someone you know is dyslexic. Dyslexia is a genetic difference with strengths in problem solving, communication skills, and creativity, while having weakness in reading, writing, and spelling. Dyslexia is not a limitation, it's a unique way of thinking. Meet incredible minds with dyslexia. Individuals with dyslexia can be supported with the right teaching, resources, and environment. If you think you, your child, your student, or someone you know is dyslexic, contact Dyslexia Nigeria for a consultation, assessment, intervention, training, and resources.
Thank you very much. And that very important video on the work that Dyslexia Nigeria is doing. And we can see the number of persons, the names that I mentioned there who are living with dyslexia. I mean, I didn't know that Will Smith, Whoopi Goldberg, and others, even our own Ike Osakio-Dua, who's also a journalist like I am, and is the host of the Big Brother Africa show, yes, also is dyslexic. And these are individuals who've been able to thrive, and not just thrive, overcome their barriers, but also thrive to become the best and amongst the best in their industries. Thank you very much, Dyslexia Nigeria, for the wonderful work that you're doing. And before we sign out today, and before we're done, we would like to hand the microphone, or the floor rather, because there's literally no microphone here. I would like to hand the floor over back to Dr. Adrian Tikolo, who's been a bit quiet since the last time, but doing a lot of work behind the scenes to ensure that everything keeps going smoothly. She is a seasoned educator with over 30 years experience in education delivery, research, administration, and management, and she's a founder of Dyslexia Nigeria. Dr. Adrienne Tikolo.
Wow, wow, wow. What a session. I mean, there's always something to learn. There's always something new. There's always something we can do. I've had such a wonderful time today. Thank you all for being part of today's impactful dialogue. I'm so filled. As we conclude the Dyslexia Nigeria's Africa Dyslexia Dialogue, the 4th edition, I am truly grateful for the depth of insight, the expert perspectives shared, and the open-hearted discussions that took place. The first panel, the second panel, Dr. Alexander, wonderful. Today, we have recognized the profound connection between dyslexia and mental health. We have explored the challenges and stigma individuals with dyslexia often face in silence. We have uncovered practical strategies for building resilience, fostering support, and advocating effectively. From Dr. Pass' keynote and our thoughtful panel sessions, we leave with some powerful takeaways. Early identification and intervention can make a world of difference. Community support and strong advocacy are essential for a lasting change. Self-awareness, self-acceptance, and empowerment are fundamental steps taken towards self-well-being. So to each participant here, I encourage you, keep this conversation alive in your circles. Share the insights and experiences we've gained today. Advocate for environments that value learning and mental well-being. And to individuals with dyslexia, I want to remind you, you are not alone in this journey. Your strengths are powerful and unique, and your voice matters, and it deserves to be heard. At Dyslexia Nigeria, we remain dedicated to building a supportive, understanding community, one that recognizes the full picture of dyslexia and works to dismantle stigma. Together, we can create spaces where every individual with dyslexia feels seen, feels supported, and is able to thrive without the weight of misunderstanding. Let's carry forward the knowledge and the connections we've made today. It's just not a dialogue. It's the start of something lasting and transformative. Thank you once again, everyone. And I look forward to continuing this journey with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adrienne Tikolo, for that very, very touching closing remark and vote of thanks. And of course, we have a marching order and a call to action to be able to do what we need to do to ensure that we break the stigma that is associated with dyslexia, not just in Nigeria and Africa, but around the world. I'd like to thank everyone who's tuned in, both the attendees and the panelists, but also to quickly remind you that you can follow Dyslexia Nigeria online. And of course, if you go to X, formerly known as Twitter, and you search for Dyslexia Nigeria, you will see the handle Dyslexia and 9JA, 9JA, standing for Niger, which is an informal way of saying Nigeria. Dyslexia 9JA. And of course, on Instagram, you can find Dyslexia Nigeria by simply looking for the handle at Dyslexia Nigeria, at Dyslexia Nigeria. A big, big, big thanks to our panelists right from the first session, and I'll please crave your indulgence to go over your names. Taryn Van Vick, Sean Anthony Robinson, and Dr. King Van On. And for our second panel, discussion, Dr. Carol Matthias Oches, Shakira Eniola Olajobi, and Audrey Abayomi. Thank you so very kindly. Of course, also not forgetting our keynote speaker, who we just heard from, Dr. Neil Alexander Passy, everyone who's been so amazing to ensure that this event is held successfully. Dr. Adrian Tikolo, thank you for having me, and thank you for the good work that you are doing. To all of you who've been on the other side watching, thank you for your time. I cannot forget also my co-moderator who did an amazing job, Olaide Ron. We've had a technical people on the backside working to ensure that everything moves smoothly. Also, of course, coordinating Jenny, who is right here with us in the office at Dyslexia Nigeria. Jenny, thank you very much. Please, let's go away with all the lessons that we have learned from today's discussions and sessions. And of course, feel free to go look for the materials, especially the ones from Dyslexia Nigeria, our panelists, and our keynote speaker. His books are out there, 15 of them. You can go buy anyone, purchase anyone. I will look for the books to buy because I need to learn some more about this so I can help you with my work. Also, he said his research work is on ResearchGate, so you can go there and learn as well. All right, and of course, thank you for joining us on this important conversation. We know you gain deeper understanding of the intersection between mental health and dyslexia and the importance of ending stigma. Remember that every individual with dyslexia is unique. Remember that every individual with dyslexia is valuable and deserving of support. Let's continue to amplify their voices. Let's continue to promote inclusivity and also to create a society where everyone can thrive. My name is Kofi Bartels. Until we see you next time, please do take care of yourself and please continue to end the stigma. Goodbye.
Not a limitation, it's a unique way of thinking. Meet incredible minds with dyslexia. Individuals with dyslexia can be supported with the right teaching, resources, and environment. If you think you, your child, your student, or someone you know is dyslexic, contact Dyslexia Nigeria for a consultation, assessment, intervention, training, and resources. Someone you know is dyslexic. Dyslexia is a genetic difference with strengths in problem solving, communication skills, and creativity, while having weakness in reading, writing, and spelling. Dyslexia is not a limitation, it's a unique way of thinking. Meet incredible minds with dyslexia. Individuals with dyslexia can be supported with the right teaching, resources, and environment. If you think you, your child, your student, or someone you know is dyslexic, contact Dyslexia Nigeria for a consultation, assessment, intervention, training, and resources. Someone you know is dyslexic. Dyslexia is a genetic difference with strengths in problem solving, communication skills, and creativity, while having weakness in reading, writing, and spelling. Dyslexia is not a limitation, it's a unique way of thinking. Meet incredible minds with dyslexia. Individuals with dyslexia can be supported with the right teaching, resources, and environment. If you think you, your child, your student, or someone you know is dyslexic, contact Dyslexia Nigeria for a consultation, assessment, intervention, training, and resources. Someone you know is dyslexic. Dyslexia is a genetic difference with strengths in problem solving, communication skills, and creativity, while having weakness in reading, writing, and spelling. Dyslexia is not a limitation, it's a unique way of thinking. Meet incredible minds with dyslexia. Individuals with dyslexia can be supported with the right teaching, resources, and environment.